Chapter 41. Magnolia, Forest Riverbank. Clang. In the sound of metal clashing against metal, the two figures holding different knight swords separated from each other and retreated rapidly. It wasn't until they were some distance away from each other that they finally stabilized themselves and stopped retreating. Huff, huff, huff. Noah and Elisha looked at each other with eyes full of fighting spirit. After calming their breathing slightly, the corners of their mouths rose at the same time. You've become stronger than before, Elisha. The same goes for you, Noah. As if they were rivals, Noah and Elisha both let out a sigh of relief at the same time. Then a new fighting spirit appeared in their eyes. Again. After a short conversation, the man and woman, who were the best companions and also the best opponents, once again raised their swords and got ready for a charge. Unfortunately, before Noah and Elisha had the time to perform the follow-up of this action, a voice sounded beside them. All right, stop here. Mira stood up and glared at Elisha. Are you trying to prolong the battle without permission again? It's my turn now. Sister Mira. Lisanna, who was sitting beside Mira, complained. Why do you have to time it so accurately? Isn't it better to let brother Noah and Elisha continue their relationship? Not at all. Mira said bluntly. If they continue to fight, won't it mean that Elisha will have more time to train? What if she becomes stronger than me? Sister Mira, aren't you being too calculative? Lisanna puffed up her cheeks. Brother Noah, Elisha, and sister, you three are the strongest among us. You're also the only magic shooters who are allowed to work outside of Magnolia. Naz, Gray, Karna, and Brother Elv are only allowed to work in Magnolia. What's there to be unhappy about? Of course not, Mira said matter-of-factly. No matter who I lose to, I can't lose to Elisha and Noah. I can't let him climb over my head. Sister Mira. Lisanna sighed. You really? In the center of the field, Noah and Elisha, who were maintaining their charging posture, looked at each other helplessly. After Myra's interference, the state that the two of them had worked so hard to get into was successfully broken. Mira must have seen this point and stopped them on time, right? With no other choice, Noah and Elisha could only sulkily put away their knight swords and let their bodies rest after a whole morning of training. Originally, this place was a secret place that only Noah and Elisha knew about. Unless it was Noah and Elisha leading the way, the chances of discovering this place, by chance, were not very high. The reason why Mira was here was very simple. What? Elisha wants to train. I definitely won't allow her to secretly get stronger. This was the second day after Mira and Elisha officially started fighting. When Mira saw Noah and Elisha planning to train at the forest bank, she immediately shouted those words. Thus, Mira became one of the users of this secret place. As for Lisanna, the reason was even simpler. If big brother Noah and sister Mira are going, then I want to go too. Thus, she became a frequent visitor of this secret place as a bystander. In fact, Naz and Gray wanted to follow as well. In the end, Elisha, who was in a bad mood because Mira had interrupted her training, glared at them and announced their withdrawal. It seemed that the powerful and occasionally violent Elisha had completely become the nemesis of Naz and Gray, the devil in their hearts. Now Noah, Mira, and Elisha would gather here almost every day when they weren't working. Occasionally, they would meet in pairs to train and hone their strength. Originally, Elisha was very dissatisfied with Mira coming along. However, after Mira had completely familiarized herself with Receive Magic, her strength had improved rapidly. It didn't take long for Makarov to approve of her and allow her to go out to work. Now, among the children of the same age group in Fairy Tale, Noah, Mira, and Elisha had impressively become existences like leaders. They were the three strongest children of their age. Even some of the weaker magi in the guild weren't a match for the three of them, causing the magi in the guild to sigh in admiration. It was also because of this that Mira and Elisha became more and more incompatible. They were constantly thinking about how to determine victory and defeat. Even the innocent Noah was dragged into it, just to prove that they were the strongest of the three. In fact, if the three of them were to go all out, their strength should be considered to be on par. It would be very difficult to determine victory and defeat. Of course, Mira and Elisha both knew that the so-called on par was only if Noah didn't use his trump card. even if he used the magical effects of his knight's sword. Up until now, the two girls knew that Noah's knight's sword was a magical weapon. However, as for what kind of abilities and magical effects it had, only Noah and Makarov, the original owner, knew. Speaking of which, brother Noah, sister Mira, Elisha, aren't you going out to work? Lisanna tilted her head. I remember that you haven't gone out to work for a month. What's wrong? Mira furrowed her brows. Is our living expenses not enough? If we don't have any additional expenses, let me calculate. Lisanna cutely raised her fingers. We should be able to last for another month. Is that so? Mira thought for a moment and nodded. Then let's go out to work in a few days. I'm not in a hurry for the time being. Elisha shook her head. Even though I really want to save up to buy a magical weapon, I'm still looking for one. So I'll wait a few more days. Mira, Lisanna, and Elisha turned their gazes to Noah at the same time, their eyes full of questions. Me. Noah's face had a rare expression of joy and excitement. I probably won't be going out to work in the near future. Hearing that, the three girls present were slightly taken aback. Noah grinned and didn't explain. He took out a handful of pitch-black pearls from his backpack and tossed them into the sky. Whong! Vast magical power was like a rolling wave, surging up violently and spreading out fiercely, sweeping across the pitch-black pearls that were falling from the sky. Suddenly, the outlines of all the pitch-black beads were covered with a circle of dim light, causing the pitch-black beads that were falling from the sky to stop in midair. Then the pearls began to dance. It was a scene that could only be described as dancing. Like a comet orbiting a satellite, the pearls, driven by the dense magical power, drew circles around Noah's body. Sometimes they spun up, sometimes they wandered left and right, sometimes they sped up, sometimes they jumped nimbly, constantly flashing through the air. After a long while, Noah stretched out his hand, and the pearls that were drawing beautiful circles around him immediately lined up like bees returning to their hive, falling into Noah's hand in an orderly manner until they all returned to Noah's palm. Noah slowly put away the pearls in his hand. On the other hand, Mira, Lisanna, and Alyssa were completely dumbfounded. Big brother Noah, Lisanna said in a daze. It was impossible for Mira and Lisanna, who had joined Fairy's Tale, not to mention Elisha, not to mention that Noah had yet to learn magic, because he couldn't control it completely. Hence, the three of them were well aware of what it meant to be able to control the pitch-black beads, so beautifully just like a dance. It was a scene that had reached a godly level of control over mana. In front of the three of them, Noah laughed, and laughed very happily. Chapter 42. In the Fairy Tale Guild, there was a very large library. It was a bookshelf that could hold 10 20-meter-tall bookshelves. There were countless thick and heavy books on it. It was a very, very large library. In this library, there were all the requests that Fairy's Tale had received, the related magic, the necessary knowledge, and so on since the establishment of Fairy's Tale. Rather than a library, it was more like a database. Occasionally, there would be some ancient documents or books that the guild members had obtained from the outside world. Basically, as long as it was related to the world of magic, apart from some of the most confidential information, one would be able to find relevant records in the library. Of course, there were also some common magic books that recorded the method to learn certain spells. Today, Noah planned to stay in the library for the whole night. He even planned to stay for a while to look for books that recorded magic knowledge. Thus, when the sky was about to turn dark and the guild members had all left the guild, Noah stood at the entrance of the guild. He was about to send off Mira, Lisanna, and Elisha, who had accompanied him for the whole day. Big brother Noah, do you really not need my help? Lisanna puffed up her cheeks, seemingly a little unhappy. The library is so big. It'll be very difficult for you to look for magic books alone. I've been to the library before when I was learning Receive Magic. Wouldn't it be better for me to help you? If that's the case, are you not going to sleep tonight? Noah shrugged. I'm planning to be busy all night, so it's best if you don't accompany me. I don't care. Lisanna started nagging, but she wasn't confident that she could accompany Noah for the whole night. She could only mumble a few words. Although I'm not interested in staying with you all night, I'm quite curious about which spell you want to learn. Mira said awkwardly as she crossed her arms and turned her head away. If you beg me, I can reluctantly accompany you. To be honest, I'm also quite curious about which spell you want to learn. Alusha also looked at Noah. You really don't need our help? I appreciate your kindness. Noah thought for a while and shook his head. Tonight, I just want to see if there's any spell I like. I might not be able to learn anything in one night. If you're really curious, it won't be too late to help me tomorrow. I see. Alusha thought for a while and nodded. Then there's no other way. I hope you'll be able to learn something tonight. Lisanna seemed like she still wanted to say something, but she was stopped by Mira. Since others don't want us to meddle in other people's business, why should we stick to them? Mira snorted coldly. She pulled Lisanna's hand and walked out. Come on, let's go home and let that man be stubborn. Wait. Sister Mira. Noah scratched his cheek and asked Alyssa with a perplexed expression. What's the matter? Mira asked as she left with Lisanna and her grumbling. What's the matter? Did I offend her again? She just wants to help you, but she can't bring herself to do it. That's just how stubborn she is. Alusha didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She then walked in the direction of her own residence. Then I'll be heading back too. See you tomorrow. Noah nodded silently. He watched as the three of them left. When they were out of sight, he turned around and returned to the interior of the guild. He then walked in the direction of the library. After almost 2 years, Noah had finally trained his mana control to the point of perfection. He had completely controlled the unparalleled mana in his body. Noah clenched his fist that was filled with a sense of strength, and could not help but feel an indescribable sense of excitement when he sensed the mana that was surging in his body like stormy waves, but did not leak out of his body at all. It couldn't be helped. Noah had been waiting for this day for a long time. As long as he could freely control his own mana, Noah would be able to learn magic. In other words, Noah could finally officially embark on the path of learning magic and begin his journey towards becoming a true archmage. Once Noah learned magic, his strength would improve by leaps and bounds. He had spent 2 years of hard training to be able to control the powerful magic power freely in his body. When that time came, surpassing Mira and Alusha, who had always been on par with Noah in terms of strength, would definitely not be a dream. If all went well, he would even be able to surpass the person who had always looked down on Noah and was dissatisfied with Noah. The image of the lightning magic user who had the same special magic power as Naz, blonde hair, sharp eyes, and arrogant expression appeared in Noah's mind. The excitement in Noah's heart turned into determination as he quickened his pace and continued to walk toward the library. After walking for about 5 minutes, Noah climbed over the bar on the first floor of the guild and saw the entrance to the fairy tale library. However, the moment he saw the entrance, Noah stopped in his tracks. A surprised expression appeared on his face. He's here. He saw Makarov sitting cross-legged on a box beside the entrance of the fairy tale library. It was rare that he didn't have the wine cup or crutches in his hands. He also didn't wear the clown-like clothes. Instead, he wore a luxurious robe with sacred patterns on it. It was believed that as long as one was in the magic world, 99% of them wouldn't be able to recognize this luxurious robe. That was a robe that only the 10 most outstanding and righteous archmages on the continent, the 10 great saint archmages, could possess. Usually, Makarov would only wear this luxurious robe on very formal occasions, representing his status as one of the 10 saints. Now, Makarov was wearing this robe that represented the 10 great holy magicians. One could imagine how much importance Makarov attached to what he was going to do next. Seeing Noah's extremely surprised expression, Makarov grinned. His eyes seemed to be able to see through everything, containing an indescribable radiance. Have we finally reached this step? Grandfather. Noah hesitated for a moment before speaking in an uncertain tone. Don't tell me you already know? If you're referring to the matter of you completely controlling your mana, then I do know. Makarov's face was full of affection. After all, I've seen your hard work in training every day. You've never once lost sight of it. This sentence was like a warm current that drilled into Noah's heart. It turned out that Makarov had always been secretly watching over him, taking care of him without a moment of stagnation. Noah took a deep breath, walked in front of Makarov, and looked him in the eye as he said, "Don't worry. Grandfather, do you have something important to say to me?" "Something important." Makarov narrowed his eyes and tilted his head. "It's indeed quite important, but I feel that it's time to seriously talk to you." After saying that, Makarov was silent for a moment before speaking. "Noah, I know that you've been avoiding your origins all this time." The look in Noah's eyes suddenly became complicated. Indeed, just like what Makarov said, Noah had actually been intentionally or unintentionally avoiding his origins. Because intuition told Noah that his origins were definitely hiding something that could not be known by others. Chapter 43. For those who knew Noah, Noah was just an orphan who was accidentally adopted by Makarov. However, even Makarov didn't know that Noah was definitely not just an orphan. Noah didn't have the memory of his previous existence at all. When he first met Makarov, Noah's appearance was already that of a 10-year-old child. He was attacked by monsters in the wild, causing Noah's magic to go berserk, which attracted the attention of Makarov, who happened to pass by nearby. Then he was adopted by Makarov. When he was just adopted by Makarov, Makarov also asked Noah about his life experience, but Noah couldn't say at all. There were two reasons. 1. At that time, Noah still couldn't speak. To be precise, it should be said that at that time, Noah still didn't understand the language of this world. He didn't know how to speak and how to express himself verbally. It was like a newborn baby who had intelligence and a 10-year-old appearance in advance. It was particularly strange. 2. Noah didn't have the memory of his life experience at all. When Noah learned the language and could speak, Makarov, who knew about this matter, said that Noah might have lost his memory. However, Noah knew that Makarov's statement was wrong. Noah didn't lose his memory. Just like what was said above, at that time, Noah was like a baby who had intelligence and a 10-year-old appearance in advance. This wasn't a metaphor, but a real fact. In other words, instead of saying that Noah lost his memory before the age of 10, it was better to say that he lost 10 years of time, as if he was already 10 years old when he was born. Although Noah didn't know why he felt this way, he vaguely knew about this matter. It was as if someone was telling him this fact, but it was too inconceivable. Therefore, Noah didn't mention this matter to anyone. Over time, he even stopped pursuing this matter. In Makarov's words, Noah was running away from his past. Of course, this was something that could not be helped. Makarov had also asked someone to help investigate Noah, but he couldn't find anything. It was as if Noah didn't exist in the past. Not even a trace of him could be found. In addition, Noah vaguely felt that he didn't lose his memory. Instead, he was born with the appearance and intelligence of a 10-year-old. No one would think that Noah was an ordinary person. It was even possible that Noah wasn't a person. Under such circumstances, how could Noah not escape from his origins? He didn't want to be treated like a monster. Seeing all the complicated emotions in Noah's eyes, Makarov sighed. You may have your own difficulties, or you may know something. I won't ask you, and I won't force you. You can escape or give up. No matter what, I just want to say that you are my grandson, Makarov's grandson, and always will be. Grandpa. Noah closed his eyes. When he opened them again, his eyes had regained their usual clarity. I am Noah Doria. I remember this matter very clearly. That's good. Makarov smiled lightly, but then became serious again. This time, what I want to tell you is not about your origins, but about your physique. Physique? Noah was startled. You really didn't notice it? Makarov touched his chin and looked at Noah. Do you remember the first time you entered Magnolia Forest and encountered a snake-shaped monster? Hearing Makarov's words, Noah remembered. When he had just joined Fairy Tale, Noah did not know that there were many powerful monsters in Magnolia Forest. In order to train his magic control, he rashly entered Magnolia Forest and encountered a snake-shaped monster. Noah still remembered that he seemed to have been bitten by the snake and fainted. When he woke up again, he was already sent to Polyesia by Makarov for treatment. After a long period of recuperation, he completely recovered and returned to the guild. Actually, I never told you that after you were bitten by that snake, you were inflicted with a lethal poison and a large number of curses. Makarov's words shocked Noah. This was because Noah clearly remembered that Makarov said that he had only suffered a little injury and did not mention anything about the poison and curses at all. I didn't tell you, not because I wanted to hide it from you, but because your condition at that time was really strange, Makarov said solemnly, as if he had sunk into his memories. Undoubtedly, when I first found you, you had obvious signs of being poisoned and cursed, and were on the verge of death. But when I sent you to Polyesia, the poison and curses in your body had all disappeared. The poison and curses disappeared? Noah could not help but touch his body and frown. Could this have something to do with my physique? That's right. Makarov nodded his head heavily. Just in case, I asked Polyesia to do a body check on you. The result was that your physique seemed to be different from ordinary people, and had characteristics that ordinary people did not have. First of all, your physique is very exclusive. Makarov extended a finger. Negative energy like poison and curses will not work on you at all. Poisoning you and cursing you will not work on you. Your body can reject all negative energy, such as curses, poisons, weakness caused by external forces, and even methods that have the effect of increasing strength, but have side effects will only be left with the effect of increasing strength, and the side effects will be eliminated. Secondly, your physique is very tolerant. Makarov extended a second finger. This tolerance will allow you to absorb some energy that does not originally belong to you, but has entered your body. For example, when you were attacked by the snake magic beast, before sending you to Polyesia, I injected a part of my mana into your body. In the end, this mana was completely absorbed by you. Lastly, your physique is very independent. Ignoring Noah's shocked expression, Makarov extended a third finger. Everyone knows that there is magic power in all things in the world, and it circulates among all things. The magic power of a magic shooter comes from this. Once a magic shooter's magic power is depleted, his body will automatically absorb magic essence from the atmosphere to replenish his magic power. But you're not like that. Even if your magic power is depleted, it will automatically recover. You don't need to absorb external power at all. At this point, Makarov muttered in a low voice. This way, it was as if its existence was like an entire world. Shaking his head, Makarov hid the thoughts in the depths of his heart. He looked at the silent Noah. I'm here to tell you this. You'll start learning magic soon, and you'll definitely meet all kinds of opponents in the future. It's absolutely necessary for you to grasp the uniqueness of your body. I hope you'll remember this. Immunity to all negative energy and side effects. Ability to absorb energy that does not belong to you. Ability to automatically recover your mana. These three effects were all demonstrating the extraordinariness of Noah's physique, and also telling Noah he was indeed not an ordinary person. You are a smart child. I believe that you will be able to overcome all difficulties by yourself. Makarov smiled meaningfully. If you want to learn my magic, I welcome you to look for me at any time. Leaving these words, when Noah raised his head, Makarov had already disappeared. Noah stood in the same spot for a long time. After a long time, he let out a long sigh and patted his cheeks. Let's not think about it for now. Let's solve the problem of my magic first. Looking at the library in front of him, Noah lifted his feet and stepped inside. Chapter 44. Fairy's Tale. The Book Vault. Rows of bookshelves that were comparable to the size of buildings were neatly arranged in the vast space. Old or new books were neatly arranged on the bookshelves, or scattered on the ground. The smell of books lingered in the air. The peaceful atmosphere fluctuated in the space. Under such circumstances, even the violent Mira could not help but lighten her footsteps and tiptoe into the library. Her invasive gaze swept across the space that was filled with books, and finally fixed on a table in the middle of all the bookshelves. There, the person Mira was looking for was lying on the table with books piled up beside him. Some of the books were still closed, while others were opened and placed in front of the young man. However, the young man did not even read a single word, because his eyes were tightly shut, and he looked like he was in a deep sleep. Seeing this, Mira frowned and snorted softly. He said that he was going to fight hard all night, but in the end, he was so tired that he fell asleep. Mira did not know that Noah had learned from Makarov that he was different from ordinary people last night. So he was exhausted and fell asleep. She walked down the stairs and walked in the direction of Noah. Looking down at Noah, who was lying on the table sleeping, Mira stretched out her hand, obviously wanting to slap Noah awake. However, in the next moment, an unexpected scene appeared in front of Mira. Drip! With an extremely soft sound, a drop of sparkling liquid slid down the cheek of Noah, who was sleeping on the table, and splashed onto the table, soaking that area. That was Noah's tear. Myra's eyes, that seemed to be filled with fierce and powerful emotions, suddenly trembled. She could not help but panic, and for a moment, she did not know what to do. Crying? Noah cried? Why? Mira could not get an answer to this question. At least she could not get an answer now. However, the scene of Noah crying in his sleep did bring a great shock to Mira. This was the first time Mira saw Noah cry. Before this, Myra's impression of Noah was that he was capable, powerful, and had a stronger will than ordinary people. He had a strong sense of autonomy and was a very gentle person. After all, before he joined Fairy Tale, Noah had saved Mira, Elfman, and Lisanna, who were in danger. He also exposed the truth of Mira being possessed by a demon and led the three of them into Fairy Tale. To Mira, Noah was an existence that saved her. Most importantly, back then, Noah did not mind caressing Myra's demonic arm that represented trauma and painful memories. This scene was deeply engraved in Myra's heart. Mira could not believe that such a person would have a weak side to him that would shed tears. However, even if she knew that Noah had a weak side that ordinary people did not know about, what could she do? She stared blankly at Noah lying on the table, tears flowing out of his closed eyes from time to time and dripping onto the table. Mira was at a loss for what to do. After a while, she hesitated and reached out with trembling hands to wipe away the tears on Noah's cheeks. As Mira wiped, Noah seemed to feel a little itchy. He wrinkled his nose and adjusted his posture. Mira, who thought that he was going to wake up, was startled. When Noah's clear breathing sound entered her ears again, Mira heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, Noah's eyes were no longer tearing up. It was as if he had been disturbed, and the dream had changed. His expression was unusually peaceful. Looking at Noah's peaceful sleeping face, Mira continued to wipe Noah's cheeks with her hands. Or rather, she was caressing Noah's cheeks. Her hands were no longer trembling, and she was no longer afraid. Instead, she was reluctant to part with it. Could it be that the reason she insists on waking him up every day is to see such a sleeping face? Mira muttered to herself. She could not help but reveal her inner thoughts. This is really sly. As she said that, Mira began to stare at Noah's sleeping face. She seemed to have thought of something. First she smiled. Her smile was unprecedentedly sweet. Then her cheeks turned red. She sneakily looked around and glanced at Noah's sleeping face. She actually swallowed a mouthful of saliva. If it's just for a while, it shouldn't be a problem, right? Myra's cheeks grew redder and redder as she said those words. Finally, as if she had mustered up some courage, she bent down in Noah's direction. At this time, Myra's eyes were like ripples in water. They were abnormally blurry. Myra's delicate and cute face was also inching closer to Noah's peaceful sleeping face, causing a pink atmosphere to reverberate in the air. Chirp. Although it was soft, because of the quiet environment, it was unusually clear. Myra's tender lips finally came into contact with Noah's lips, causing the pink atmosphere to become a little warmer, and the atmosphere became a little hot. Ugh. After an unknown amount of time, Mira reluctantly let go of Noah's lips. She straightened her body and stroked her mouth with one hand. Her cheeks were incomparably red, her eyes were blurred, and her expression was blank. It was as if she had lost her mind. My first kiss was given to him? As if even she couldn't believe what had happened, Mira stroked her lips. After a long while, she embarrassedly held her red cheeks and softly cried out, What did I do, Just as he finished speaking, a voice full of doubt came from behind Mira. What did you do? Wah. The sudden voice made Mira, who had a guilty conscience, scream out loud. The newcomer seemed to be startled by Myra's sudden scream, and also let out a scream. Mira hurriedly turned around and looked behind her. Then she panicked and stuttered. Lisana? It's me. Lisana patted her little chest and stared blankly at the panicked and blushing Mira. Sister Mira, what's wrong? Why did you suddenly scream? And in a nothing. Mira took a few steps back and laughed ingratiatingly. Her voice was a little hoarse. Lisana, when did you come? Just now. Lisana looked at her sister with a puzzled expression. What's wrong? No, this. Mira began to fidget. Did you see anything just now? See what? Lisana looked more and more puzzled. Should I have seen something? Hearing this, Mira silently breathed a sigh of relief and gradually returned to her original calmness. Sister Mira. Lisana stared at Mira and puffed out her cheeks. Are you hiding something from me? Ahaha. Mira guiltily looked away. How could I hide something from you? Right. How suspicious. Lisana stared at Mira, causing Mira to feel even more guilty. She unconsciously reached out her hand and covered her mouth. Lisana was momentarily stunned. Then, as if she had thought of something, she hurriedly turned her head and looked at Noah, who was sleeping on the table. When she saw that Noah's lips were moist and swollen, Lisana's eyes widened, and she looked at Mira in disbelief. Sister Mira, could it be that you? It's about time to wake him up. Mira frantically interrupted Lisana and said embarrassedly. Lisana, aren't you curious about what magic he learned? Then hurry up and wake him up. Lisana pouted and tears welled up in her eyes. Sister Mira, you're too sly. Little did she know that Mira had just said the same thing. Chapter 45. An indescribable silence hung in the air of the huge library. Noah held a thick book in his hands, but his attention wasn't on it. Instead, he was looking forward, his eyes filled with subtle emotions. Across from Noah, Mira and Lisana were sitting side by side, but they weren't as rowdy as they usually were. Upon closer inspection, one could see that their reactions were a little abnormal. First was Mira. Mira was no longer the violent girl she used to be. Not only did she look a little embarrassed, her cheeks were also flushed. While she was cute, this wasn't the Mira Noah knew. Lisana was the complete opposite. While she was the youngest of them all, she was also the most mischievous and precocious. Today, however, she was acting like a child, sulking as if she was angry. This scene had been going on ever since Noah was woken up by the inexplicably angry Lisana. Looking at the pair of adorable sisters who were abnormal from all aspects, Noah felt rather depressed. As a result, he couldn't concentrate on the book in his hand at all. Noah lifted his head from the book and looked at Lisana. Lisana snorted and turned her head away, still looking angry. Noah blinked and turned his gaze to Mira. Myra's shoulders shook in an extremely exaggerated manner, and her originally pink cheeks immediately turned red. She glared at Noah and called out in an extremely embarrassed manner. What? Do you want to fight? Noah was puzzled. It wasn't strange for Mira to look for a fight. What was strange was that when Mira said, "Do you want to fight?" in a domineering and vicious manner, what was up with her flushed cheeks and delicate version of "Do you want to fight?" Noah really didn't know what had happened between the two sisters, so he decided not to think about it and asked directly. I say, are you guys hiding something from me? Hearing this, the white-haired sisters reacted differently. Mira shuddered and turned her head away with a guilty conscience. Lisana, on the other hand, seemed even angrier. She even shouted at Noah. Brother Noah is a big idiot. The questions in Noah's heart almost broke through the sky. Could it be that this was the legendary young girl's heart that men couldn't understand? Then, if you have the time to chat, why don't you hurry up and find a spell that you like? Mira changed the topic uncomfortably. Don't you want to learn magic? Of course I want to learn. Noah felt that he wouldn't be able to get any answers, even if he continued to pursue the matter. He could only sigh as he adjusted the spellbook in his hand. Aren't we looking for it? Seeing that the topic was finally back on track, Lisana also gradually returned to her usual self. She tilted her head and asked, You've been looking for a whole night. Haven't you found a suitable one yet? Basically, all the magic books in the guild's library are here. Noah patted the books that were piled up like a small hill on the table next to him. looking helpless. But I've been looking for a whole night, and I still haven't found a suitable one. Is it that difficult? Mira muttered as she grabbed a book and flipped through it. It's just choosing a spell, not choosing clothes. Can't you just pick the most powerful, and most useful spell? It's not that the more powerful the spell, the better it is. For example, your receive spell is considered extremely ordinary, while Naz's Dragon Slayer spell is a precious lost spell from ancient times. But aren't you still much stronger than Naz? Noah used one hand to support his cheek as his tone became a little bored. That's why I chose to choose slowly. Otherwise, I would have gone straight to Grandpa. He definitely knows a lot of precious, rare, and powerful spells. In fact, Noah had also thought of using the method of self-awakening to learn magic. After all, self-awakening magic might not necessarily be the most powerful, but it was the most suitable for the target of awakening magic, and the most suitable for the target of awakening magic. However, it wasn't that easy to do this. There was a most crucial problem, and that was, Noah didn't know how to awaken the magic hidden in his body. Everyone's way of awakening their own magic was different. Mira, for example, awakened her receive spell after coming into contact with a demon. Alesha also learned her magic through self-awakening. And Alesha's way of awakening her magic, according to Alesha herself, was to strengthen her heart in a moment of crisis, and thus awaken her outfit-changing magic. Noah didn't know how to awaken his own magic. 90% of the world's sorcerers chose to learn magic on their own for this reason. And Noah naturally wasn't surprised. Moreover, what if the most suitable magic for oneself was not suitable for battle after awakening? The method of awakening magic was unknown, and the type of magic was also unknown. This caused 99% of the world's sorcerers to learn magic by themselves. Noah had already delayed his awakening for 2 whole years because of the problem of magic. Now that he could finally learn magic, he didn't want to pin his hopes on an unknown self-awakening. Brother Noah, why don't you learn receive spell like us? Lasana's eyes lit up as she suggested. This way we can use the same magic. Hearing this, Noah looked at Mira, but inadvertently saw a trace of anticipation in her eyes, and he scratched his cheek. It's not that I haven't considered receive spell, but I'm not as special as Mira, who can accept the power of demons, so I've been thinking about it. Hearing Noah's words, Mira and Lisana opened their mouths at the same time, and just as they were about to say something, a loud sound interrupted them. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. It was a sound as loud as the bells in the church. As if it was some kind of festival, the loud sound of a bell suddenly rang throughout the entire fairy's tale, and even the whole of Magnolia. The sound was so loud that almost everyone in Magnolia could hear it. Before Noah, Mira, and Lisana could do anything, a huge commotion reverberated from the fairy's tale guild outside the library. Kildas! It's Kildas! Kildas is back! At the same time, Noah, Mira, and Lisana heard an alarm ring in the sky above Magnolia. Magnolia has changed to Kildas mode. Residents, please proceed to the designated location as soon as possible. As soon as the alarm sounded, Noah, Mira, and Lisana felt the ground begin to shake. What's going on? Noah stood up and looked at the books on the shelves that were trembling. Mira hurriedly pulled Lisana behind her to protect her. Kildas! The guild was still in an uproar. Kildas! Mira and Lisana looked at each other in confusion. Who's Kildas? Noah frowned and walked towards the door without saying a word. Mira and Lisana hurriedly followed him out of the library. When Noah, Mira, and Lisana came out of the library and went to the bar on the first floor of the guild, they saw a scene like this. All the magic shooters in the guild fell silent, as if the commotion just now was all fake. Their gazes converged in the direction of the main entrance. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the guild, a figure was slowly approaching. Chapter 46. Almost in an instant, Noah held his breath and, like the people around him, focused his gaze in the direction of the gate. Even though he was inside the guild, Noah could clearly see what was happening outside. If there was a word to describe Noah's current mood, it would be shock. This was because Magnolia had cracked open. Magnolia, which originally had many buildings, was divided into two sides with the guild entrance as the dividing line. Two thick walls were built to protect the buildings on both sides. As a result, there was a road leading from the outside of Magnolia to the entrance of the fairy's tale. Under such circumstances, the existence named Kildas slowly walked over from the opposite side of the road and stepped into the gate of the guild. He was a middle-aged man around 40 years old. Moreover, it was a middle-aged man who wore a dusty cloak. His chin was full of stubble, and he looked rather sloppy. Such a sloppy middle-aged man, carrying a cloth bag, walked in from the outside and appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Undoubtedly, he was just a sloppy middle-aged man, but Noah felt a strong sense of presence from him. Of course, what Noah cared about was not the strong sense of presence, but the factor that caused this sense of presence to manifest. Noah clearly felt it with his powerful senses. The body of this sloppy middle-aged man in front of him had a power so powerful that it could defeat Noah in an instant. Noah subconsciously clenched his fists and his body tensed up, as if he had entered a state of battle. He stared at the middle-aged man named Kildas. Kildas had just stepped into the guild entrance and only had time to look around. Then, he suddenly tilted his head in confusion and fixed his gaze on Noah. The members of the guild who wanted to greet Kildas also seemed to have noticed that something was wrong. They looked at each other and forgot to speak. Mira, Lisanna, Elusha, Naz Gray, Karna, Elfman, and the other children of the same age seemed to be thirsty. Their lips became dry, and they opened their mouths, but no words came out. In the air, a solemn atmosphere was spreading. Looking at Noah, who was staring at him with his body tensed up, as if he was ready to fight at any time, Kildas suddenly smiled. His smile was very steady. It seems that there are some interesting people in the guild while I was away. But I'm not your enemy, so you don't have to be so wary of me, right? Kildas' steady and light voice spread throughout the guild, instantly dispersing the solemn atmosphere. Upon hearing Kildas' words, Noah was taken aback. Then, he realized that his actions were a little too intense. He took in a deep breath and slowly relaxed his body before bowing and apologizing. I'm sorry, my reaction was too intense. You don't have to take it to heart. Kildas' serious expression turned into a frivolous and exaggerated smile, and then he asked curiously. Compared to that, I'm more curious about why you're suddenly wary of me. Because you're very strong, Noah replied without hiding anything. I can feel that you're very strong. If you were to attack me, I'm afraid that you could defeat or even kill me in an instant. Hearing Noah's words, Mira, Lisanna, and Elusha, who were of the same age as him, revealed astonished expressions. On the other hand, the magic shooters in the guild took it for granted. So that's why you're suddenly wary of me. You're afraid that I would attack you? Kildas was stunned at first, but he soon burst into laughter. That's interesting. Hey! At this moment, Naz jumped out and pointed at Kildas arrogantly. Who are you? Me? Kildas pointed at himself and grinned. My name is Kildas, and I'm also a sorcerer from Fairy's Tale. Fairy Tale sorcerer? Mira, Lisanna, Elusa, Elfman, and the others all looked at each other in bewilderment. Kana. Noah, on the other hand, cast his gaze to Kana, who was standing at the side, and asked this senior, who was the first to join Fairy Tale among the children of the same age. Do you know him? However, Noah did not get a response, because Kana was staring blankly at Kildas, who was standing at the door. She did not say a single word and looked absent-minded. Seeing this, Noah pushed Kana's shoulder in a daze. Kana? Ah! Kana exclaimed softly. When she came back to her senses, she forced a smile on her face. What's wrong? Didn't you hear what I said? Noah was puzzled. Are you not feeling well? No. I'm fine. Kana quickly brushed it off. What did you just say? I want to ask you, who is this person? Noah could only suppress his doubts and ask again. Why did Magnolia suddenly have such a change? Are you talking about Kildas? Kana looked at Kildas again. Noah did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that Kana looked at Kildas with a complicated and special gaze. He's the strongest sorcerer in Fairy Tale. The strongest magic shooter in Fairy Tale. Noah was surprised. You mean he is stronger than Grandpa? I don't know about this. Kana touched her head embarrassedly. After I joined Fairy Tail, Kildas has been known as the strongest magic shooter in Fairy Tail. As for whether he is stronger than the president, only the president knows. Then, why did Magnolia become like that? Noah turned his head and looked at Magnolia, which had been split in half to create a path to the fairy's tail. Is it because of Kildas? Yes. Kana nodded heavily. Because the magic that Kildas used was the superior grade destruction magic crush. Noah's eyes suddenly became cold. There were thousands of magic spells in the magic world. Some of them were ancient magic that had been passed down since ancient times and developed by the ancestors. Some were lost since ancient times, and only a few people had the luck to learn the lost magic. Some were new magic spells that were developed by some outstanding magic shooters. Some were rare magic spells that were obtained from documents that were left behind by some powerful magic shooters. Among so many magic spells, there were naturally some that were far more powerful than ordinary magic. Once learned, the power would be extremely outstanding. Superior grade destruction magic. Magic with this title meant that in the field of destruction, this magic was definitely at the forefront of all magic, far surpassing the existence of other magic spells. Although it could not be said to be the strongest, it was still many times stronger than ordinary magic spells. In terms of destruction, perhaps even Naza's Dragon Slayer magic could not be compared to this magic spell. Kildas seems to be unable to control his magic properly. If he is not careful, it will cause a lot of damage. Kana explained. So, in order to not cause unnecessary losses, Magnolia specially switched to a mode that was convenient for Kildas to walk when he returned. Noah was a little speechless, but then he became excited. Destructive power, that even the town had to avoid? Superior grade destruction magic, how powerful was it? Chapter 47. With the return of Kildas, the magic shooters of Fairy Tail were in an extremely excited state for the whole day. It was not only because Kildas was the strongest magic shooter in Fairy Tail, but also because Kildas was usually wandering outside and rarely returned to the guild. Sometimes, Kildas would spend a lot of time on extremely difficult missions. Sometimes, Kildas just wanted to travel outside and train himself while living the life of a wandering hero. So he spent a lot of time in other places. Everyone knew that the strongest magic shooter in Fairy Tail was a person called Kildas, but Kildas rarely appeared in the guild. Naturally, when he returned, everyone became excited. Not to mention, the magic that Kildas used was the superior destruction magic crush. Therefore, even if he was just passing by Magnolia, it would still cause a big commotion. Fortunately, Kildas did not stay in the guild for too long today. After seeing that Makarov was not in the guild, he left the sentence, "I'll come back tomorrow," and left directly. Following Kildas's departure, the guild gradually returned to its original state. However, the guild was still in an excited state, which made the children of Noah's generation, who were not familiar with Kildas, very curious. That guy is the most powerful sorcerer in Fairy Tail? If I beat him, I'll be the strongest, right? The hot-blooded Nez spat out flames and rushed out of the guild after saying this. Idiot, Gray, who joined Fairy Tail only a few years later than Katrina, was also not familiar with Kildas, but he had more or less heard of Kildas's rumors. He sneered at Naz and sat on the side, chatting with others. He even took off his clothes. Kildas? Alusha pondered for a while, and then walked out of the guild with a determined expression. She must have been stimulated by Kildas, and decided to use him as a target to strengthen her training. A man among men, Elfman mumbled. Elfman muttered these words with a longing look in his eyes. It seemed that he had taken Kildas as his idol. Katrina stared blankly at the direction Kildas left, and did not say anything for a long time. I don't know why everyone is so excited about such a big uncle. This was Myra's vicious and disdainful comment. He's quite manly but very sloppy. Are all boys like that when they grow up? This was the sigh of the mischievous Lysana, as she blinked her big eyes. Noah was the only one who glanced around at his companions before he quietly left and walked towards his room. Phew! Lying on his bed, Noah slowly exhaled and closed his eyes, sinking into silence. To be honest, The appearance of Kildas not only stimulated Alusha and the others, but also stimulated Noah. With extraordinary senses, Noah clearly knew how powerful Kildas, the strongest magic shooter in fairy tale, was. Noah had only felt such a strong sense of presence and power from one person so far. Makarov. In other words, as the strongest magic shooter in fairy tale. Even if he was not as strong as Makarov, he was definitely at the level of the 10 great Saint Magi. Noah really did not expect that there would be such a powerful existence in fairy tale. Kildas is definitely an S-rank magic shooter. S-rank magic shooter. That was a title that only magic shooters who passed the internal test of the guild and were recognized by the guild's president could have. In the Fiori Kingdom, as long as it was one of the top guilds, there would be at least 1 or 2 S-rank magic shooters. Due to the differences in the internal tests of each guild, the strength of the S-rank sorcerers in each guild was also different. However, even in the Phantom Lord, which had a large number of people and many branches, the number of S-rank sorcerers did not exceed 5. Fairy Tale's S-rank magic shooters test was notoriously difficult. Until now, Noah had only heard of S-rank magic shooters in the guild, but had never seen one. Today, Kilda's appearance made Noah certain that he was definitely an S-rank magic shooter in fairy tale. Grandpa always forbade me from going to the 2nd floor, saying that there were extremely difficult missions that only magic shooters who were recognized by him could take on. In the past, I did not know what level I had to be considered as being recognized by Grandpa. Could it be that I have to be at Kilda's level? Noah sighed. Looks like I'm still far from it. Noah did not know that his thoughts were preconceived. The 2nd floor of the fairy's tale was only accessible to S-rank magic shooters in the guild, and only S-rank magic shooters could accept quests from inside the fairy's tale. The S-rank magic shooters in fairy tale were very high. But how could it be so high that only people who had reached the level of the 10 great saints could become one? Kildas had undoubtedly reached the level of the 10 great saints, so it was natural for him to become an S-rank magic shooter. Noah equating Kildas, a 10 great saints, with an S-rank magic shooter was somewhat wrong. However, this did not hinder Noah's next decision. Reaching out, Noah looked at his palm that was facing the ceiling and clenched it tightly. The problem of magic has to be solved as soon as possible. With that said, Noah couldn't help but have an idea in his mind, and it got out of hand. At this moment, there was a light knock on the door, and Lasana's little head poked in. Seeing Noah lying on the bed and staring blankly at the ceiling, she faintly sighed. "Big brother Noah, why did you suddenly leave? You made me look for you for so long. What's wrong? Are you hungry?" Noah did not even turn his head as he casually replied. "Sorry, Lisana, I can't eat with you today. I'm thinking about some things you can eat with Mira and the others. It's morning now, and I've already eaten breakfast. I won't be hungry so soon." Lisana walked over angrily and slapped away Noah's clenched fist that was facing the ceiling. She then put her hands on her waist. "Big brother Noah, I find that you're getting more and more annoying." "Ha." Noah looked at her with a puzzled expression. "I don't think I've done anything to annoy you, right?" "You have. You have." Lasana's eyes were starting to moisten. "Big brother Noah, do you not like me anymore? Where did this come from?" Noah hurriedly got up and looked at Lisana, who was about to cry at any time. He felt a headache coming on. "Lisana, don't cry. As long as you don't cry, I'll do anything." "Really?" Lisana secretly glanced at Noah with teary eyes, her eyeballs rolling. Then close your eyes." Noah immediately closed his eyes. The next moment, an extremely soft touch covered Noah's lips, causing him to frown slightly. However, he did not suspect anything, and continued to close his eyes. Hee. After a while, the soft touch disappeared and Noah heard Lasana's laughter. When he opened his eyes, he saw her blushing face, but she looked extremely happy. "I'm even with big sister Mira." After saying that, Lisana skipped out of Noah's room. Noah scratched his face. What's going on? Chapter 48. The next day, it was the 2nd day after Kilda's return to Fairy's Tale. Noah got out of bed, put on the clothes that Lisana had chosen, and went to the bar on the first floor of the guild with Lysana. Lysana wanted to hide behind Noah as soon as she went downstairs. After all, Naz and Gray would pounce on Noah for a duel every time this happened, and then they would be dealt with by Noah. Lysana didn't want to be implicated in this process. However, Lysana soon discovered it. Today, Naz and Gray didn't pounce on Noah at all. Instead, they sat at a wooden table. Naz, who was sitting there, was hugging his arms with tears in the corners of his eyes. He looked angry, and there was a bump on his head. Gray was making fun of Naz, which made Naz very angry. His eyes became more and more moist, and he looked like he could cry at any time. Beside Naz and Gray, Mira, Alusha, Kana, Elfman, and the others were also there. They looked at Naz, who had a bump on his head, and seemed to be scolding him, which made Naz a little dejected. What's wrong with Naz? Noah naturally noticed this phenomenon, and felt a little strange. Could it be that he went to challenge Mira or Alusha in advance and was defeated? The two looked at each other, and walked in the direction of Naz. Hey, Sister Mira. Lysana pulled Myra's hand and asked curiously, what's wrong with Naz? Lysana? The moment Mira saw Lysana, she glanced at Noah without a trace, and then snorted coldly. He deserves it. Naz seems to have gone to duel with Kildas. Alusha spread her hands and said helplessly, in the end you saw it too? This simple sentence made Noah and Lysana immediately understand, and they laughed bitterly at the same time. Should I really say as expected of Naz? It's really Nazi style. No matter what, the opponent is still the strongest magic shooter in the guild. How could this bastard succeed? Gray held his head in his hands. Even Noah said that Kildas is very strong enough to defeat him in an instant. You can't even defeat Noah. How can you defeat Kildas? No matter what, this opponent's level is too high. Kana sighed and then pointed at Gray as if nothing had happened and reminded him. And Gray, where are your clothes? Oh, as usual. Gray was slow to realize that he was only wearing a pair of shorts. Hey Noah, is that Uncle Kildas really that strong? Elfman asked Noah in a surprised tone. Strong enough to defeat you in an instant? Everyone present turned their eyes to Noah, and their eyes were filled with the same surprise as Elfman's. At the same time, they were full of doubts. It couldn't be helped. These juniors didn't know what kind of strength Kildas had, but they knew very well what kind of strength Noah had. Even if he didn't know magic, Noah still relied on his excellent swordsmanship, and his strength was comparable to the strongest among them, Mira and Alusha. Even if Naz and Gray joined forces to sneak attack Noah, Noah could still defeat Naz and Gray in an instant. They believed that even if Noah was compared to the magic shooters in the guild with real strength, he would definitely not lose out to them. Therefore, even Naz, who had been defeated by Kildas, and Kana, who seemed to have a strange attitude towards Kildas, doubted that Noah would be defeated in an instant. Mira, Lysana, Alusha, Gray, and the others who had a good relationship with Noah were even more suspicious. In front of everyone, Noah shrugged. I can only say that Kildas is really strong. If he gets serious, I definitely won't be able to hold on for a second. A second? Everyone's eyes widened to the maximum at the same time. At this moment, a voice sounded from the side. Yo, you're still so energetic today. Hearing this voice, before anyone could react, Naz had already jumped up. Kildas, who had not changed his attire at all, had a sloppy face full of stubble. He greeted the surrounding guild members while walking towards the group of children. Seeing Kildas walking towards them, the group of young boys and girls began to feel a little nervous. Only Noah and Naz, one was sizing up Kildas, and the other was shouting excitedly. Kildas, let's continue our duel. Duel! Kildas touched his head, and waved his hand with a look of disgust. Sorry, let's talk about it next time. Okay. Although he said okay, Naz had already moved his body, and was ready to rush in the direction of Kildas. Idiot! Gray and Elfman pounced on Naz and held him down, making Naz struggle and shout. Let me go! Let me go! I want to duel with Kildas! You bastard! Kildas was helpless. So impulsive, is he really a young man? Isn't this good? Alusha, who had been sizing up Kildas with a scrutinizing gaze, smiled coldly. Since Naz has so much fighting spirit, it's not bad for you to accompany him. right? No, I just came back not long ago, and I haven't rested enough. Kildas still waved his hand with a perfunctory look. Naz, who only knows how to be straightforward, won't have any advantage in dueling with me, so let's forget about it. Hearing this, everyone nodded one after another. The strength of Kildas was unfathomable. If one wanted to challenge such an existence, one would have to use roundabout tactics and strategies, when one's own strength was at a serious disadvantage. Only then could one have a pitiful chance of winning. For someone like Naz who only knew how to charge forward, it was needless to say, no matter how fiercely he charged, he would just be sending himself to death. The pitiful chance of defeating Kildas was directly reduced to zero. Therefore, everyone could understand the meaning of Kildas' words. However, the development of the next moment was beyond everyone's understanding. Then, Noah raised his head and looked at Kildas with a provocative smile. How about I fight with you, Noah? Everyone was shocked. Kildas was also stunned. Looking at Noah, the lazy and sloppy expression on his face gradually disappeared and was replaced by the steady smile that he had when he first returned to the guild yesterday. Then I'll accompany you for a while. Everyone was stunned at first, and then they exclaimed at the same time. Come on. Instead of cheering, voices came from all around, more like joining in the fun. Noah, brother Noah. Mira, Lisanna, Elisha, Naz, Gray, Kana, and Elfman stood in the center of the crowd. Some of their faces were full of worry, some of them were full of seriousness, and some of them looked excited. It seemed that they were having more fun than Noah. On the other side of the human wall built by the magic shooters, Noah solemnly held a sheathed knight's sword in his hand and stared at Kildas, one hand still holding the hilt of his sword. Compared to Noah, Kildas had a relaxed smile on his face. Before we fight, let me ask you a question. Kildas chuckled. Why do you suddenly want to fight with me? Didn't you say that I can defeat you in an instant? Then you have to be serious. Noah maintained the most natural posture of drawing his sword and chuckled. And before you get serious, I think I can still exchange a few moves with you. Actually, I'm quite curious about the president's grandson. After all, his other grandson is your brother in name. Sooner or later, I'll have to admit defeat to him, right? Kildas gestured at Noah provocatively. So, let me see what you're capable of. Noah did not answer, but his grip on his sword tightened. Chapter 49. Big Brother Noah. Seeing that the battle was about to begin, Lisanna, who was most worried about Noah, could not help but shout. Be careful. Noah nodded slightly and turned to look at the relaxed Kildas. He slowly lifted his foot and stomped it down. Bang! A loud stomping sound came from under Noah's foot. Noah's body turned into a black shadow and rushed towards Kildas. Good speed. Kildas praised. He clenched his fist and directly raised it in front of himself. A layer of dim light was faintly shining on his arm. Clang! The black shadow suddenly stopped in front of Kildas and swung his knight's sword mercilessly towards Kildas's hand. The result was the sound of metal clashing. You're quite strong too. After blocking Noah's attack with his bare hand, Kildas's body trembled slightly. He laughed in surprise at Noah, who had taken a step back. Instead of attacking, he swung his arm. No way! In the crowd, Mira, Lisanna, and Elisha were all dumbfounded. He blocked Noah's attack with his bare hand? Noah also stared at Kildas's swinging arm. With his extraordinary sensing ability, Noah felt the mana covering it. To be honest, the mana covering Kildas's arm was not that exaggerated. At most, it was used to strengthen the hardness of his body. If it was someone else who used the same amount of mana to strengthen their body and blocked Noah's attack with their bare hand, their hand would definitely be chopped off. However, Kildas used the same amount of mana to strengthen his arm and block Noah's attack. Others might find it inconceivable, but Noah realized that something was wrong. Kildas didn't just use his mana to strengthen his arm. Noah could clearly feel that the mana covering Kildas's arm was compressed into a ball like water. This was the secret behind how Kildas was able to block Noah's attack with his bare hand. When ordinary people used mana to strengthen their arm, it was like using mana as water while their hand was soaked in water. This way, When someone slashed with a sword, the water would more or less create resistance, reducing the strength and threat of the attack. Not only did Kildas use magic to strengthen the hardness of his arms, he also squeezed the magic into a dense ball, directly compressing the water into ice. The result of this was that ice was able to block the slash, unlike water, which was only able to obstruct the slash and reduce its power. Noah had never seen such a way of using mana before, and it made Noah's eyes light up as he came to a sudden realization. So mana could be used like this? Noah, who had a lot of understanding, glanced at the knight's sword in his hand, and his eyes flashed. Since Kildas could compress his mana and increase its density to strengthen his arm, then if he used the same method to cover his sword with mana, would he be able to greatly increase the sharpness of his sword? Thinking of this, Noah directly turned his thoughts into actions. The mana in his body flowed out continuously and gathered on the knight's sword in his hand. To be precise, it should be said that it gathered on the body of the knight's sword. Then, Noah used his superb control over magic power that he had trained hard for 2 years to control the magic power that covered the knight's sword. He compressed the magic power that flowed like water on the sword into a thin layer that was even thinner than the sword itself. Kildas, who noticed this, was really surprised this time. But before Kildas could say anything, Noah once again rushed out. His body shot out like a bullet from a gun, and the knight's sword in his hand rubbed against the air. In the sharp sound of the air breaking, he slashed towards Kildas. Kildas's gaze turned cold. He hurriedly raised his hand that was compressed with mana and blocked in front of himself. Clang! A loud sound, like the ringing of a bell, reverberated in the air. Kildas, who was at ease just now, actually took a step back in the sound of the bell. His eyes were full of shock as he looked at Noah. Kildas retreated. The magic shooters of fairy tale suddenly burst into an uproar. A 13-year-old child had forced the strongest S-rank magic shooters of fairy tale to retreat? Although Kildas was careless and didn't expect Noah to suddenly use mana in such a way, it was natural for outsiders to be surprised. As for Mira, Lysana, and the others, their faces were full of joy. On the other hand, Noah, who had caused this scene, seemed to be immersed in it. His pupils gradually constricted. It can be even thinner and sharper. Muttering this sentence, the mana covering the knight's sword in Noah's hand surged and became even thinner and sharper. In fact, Noah even made the magic vibrate and rub against each other like a chainsaw. Ha! With a cold shout, the knight's sword in Noah's hand turned into a blur and swung forward like a storm, leaving behind streaks of dazzling sword light. His vision was filled with streaks of sword light in an instant, which made Kildas tremble. He quickly raised his other hand and used both hands to block in front of his body. Clang, 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 clang. In the center of the field, streaks of sword light fell on the pair of muscular arms. It was as if they were chopping on some kind of steel, and the sound of bells rang out continuously. It can be even thinner and sharper. Noah's gaze became sharper and sharper, and the knight's sword in his hand swung even more violently. The mana covering the sword was becoming thinner and thinner, and the friction was getting faster and faster, making the sword sharper and sharper. Perhaps, under such circumstances, Noah already had the ability to slash a house in half with a single slash. However, such powerful slashes only left white marks on Kildas's arm that was blocking in front of him. They couldn't even scratch the skin on Kildas's hand. What a shocking fellow! Yeezichin sighed. Hiding behind his crossed arms, Kildas raised his head and looked through the streaks of sword light that formed a net and fixed his gaze on Noah's face. Then, he slowly raised the corner of his mouth. But this is not enough. After saying that, Kildas abruptly opened his arms. Bang! The streaks of sword light that were slashing towards Kildas's arms were like a spider web and were easily blown up by Kildas. However, Noah was not surprised when he saw Kildas's exposed chest. Instead, he was delighted. Now's the time. Wave-like magic power surged out of Noah's body and gushed into the knight's sword in his hand, pouring into the blade of the knight's sword. The knight's sword in Noah's hand emitted a strong light. Clang! Along with the sound of the sword, A comet-like sword light burst out from the space with a sharp sonic boom. It was like a meteor flashing by, and almost instantly arrived in front of Kildas. Kildas's expression changed and then froze. For the first time since the beginning of the match, he had a serious expression on his face. "You're too naive." Lowering his body slightly, Kildas abruptly stretched out one of his hands and directly clenched it. A monstrous amount of mana surged out from his hand. Bang! Under the gazes of the crowd, the dazzling sword light turned into powder like a piece of dough when Kildas clenched his fist. Then, Kildas threw a punch at Noah's face, whose pupils had shrunk. Chapter 50. Dong. Along with a low muffled sound, the hearts of the surrounding onlookers also jumped fiercely. Soon after, everyone present saw it. Noah's small body was like a kite with a short string. His body flipped a few times in the air and flew out. Then he landed heavily on the ground dozens of meters away, making a loud crashing sound. "Noah, brother Noah!" Mira, Lysana, Elisha, Naz, Gray, Karna and Elfman all exclaimed in unison as they ran madly towards Noah. Oh no! Even Kildas, who was still in the posture of swinging his fist, was shocked. "I accidentally got serious. Brother Noah!" Lysana helped Noah up from the ground, her eyes almost instantly tearing up. "Brother Noah! Brother Noah!" Mira stood in front of Kildas, her body surging with extremely dark mana like ink. Her eyes and expression became extremely ferocious. "I'll kill you!" Elisha, Naz and Gray also got into their battle stances and stared at Kildas in front of them. It seemed that they would attack at any time. Although fists and kicks had no eyes, it was inevitable that there would be some injuries in this kind of duel. However, looking at the power of Kildas's punch, it was possible that it could have blasted a rock. As for Noah, it would not be strange even if he died, since he had taken the hit with his head. No matter how much Fairy Tale valued her companions, no matter how much she shouldn't be hostile towards her own people, under such circumstances, everyone couldn't care less. "No matter what, this is too much," Elisha said angrily. "Do you want to kill Noah? Don't think that we will be afraid of you just because you are an S-rank archmage." Gray also surged with mana. It seemed that he was also very angry. "If anything happens to Noah, I will not let you go." Kildas, Naz gritted his teeth. "Watch me take revenge for Noah." Seeing that Alyssa, Naz and Gray were surging with mana, and Mira was about to rush out with a face full of rage, Karna and Elfman were completely panicking. "Say, everyone." Elfman was at a loss for what to do. "Cold, calm down." Karna stood in front of everyone and opened her arms, as if she was protecting Kildas. "Wait, everyone calm down." Around them, the magic shooters from Fairy Tale also cast a reproachful look at Kildas. Just as Kildas was about to say something, Noah gently pushed her away and stood up. "Everyone, don't worry. I'm fine." "Noah, brother Noah." Mira, Lysana, Elisha, and the others quickly gathered around Noah, as if they were going to take care of Noah. "You're fine." Kildas was surprised to see that Noah seemed to be fine. "You were hit by that punch and you're fine? If I was hit, something must have happened." Noah smiled bitterly and raised the knight's sword in his hand and stroked it. "It helped me dodge your punch." "It?" Everyone's eyes were focused on the knight's sword in Noah's hand. "That's a magic weapon, right?" Kildas suddenly realized. "You mean it was the effect of this magic weapon that helped you dodge my punch?" "Yes." Noah nodded and held the knight's sword in front of him. "This sword can control the distance at will." Control the distance at will. This was the effect that Noah's magic knight's sword had been hiding. As long as mana was infused into the sword, the wielder could control the distance at will. For example, if the distance was shortened, even if the wielder was some distance away from the opponent, the sword could still reach them. When Mira, Elfman, and Lysana were in danger in the forest, Noah had used this effect to shorten the distance between him and the giant, saving Lysana in time. Just now, Noah also took advantage of the moment when Kildas opened his hand and revealed a flaw to use this effect. He shortened the distance between him and Kildas to the limit and struck out with that stunning sword. After all, if the distance was reduced to 1/100th, The speed of the knight's sword would increase by 100 times, and the force of impact would be 10,000 times greater. Moreover, Noah's sword also had the ability to negate the recoil, allowing Noah to strike with all his might at any time without worrying about being injured by the recoil. That was why the three siblings were cut in half by Noah's sword. Kildas had no choice but to get serious just now to block Noah's strike, that had shortened the distance by 100 times, increased the speed by 100 times, and increased the force of impact by 10,000 times. On the other hand, as long as he used the magic knight sword to extend the distance, he could make the opponent's attack miss and nullify the opponent's attack. Noah had used this effect to nullify Kildas's punch, allowing him to remain unscathed. Of course, Noah's magic knight sword had its limits. The greater the distance that had to be shortened or extended, the more mana the wielder had to expend. Noah had magic that no one else could match, so this limitation was not a big deal. However, the magic knight's sword had another limitation. The distance it could control was 100 meters. Regardless of whether the distance was shortened or extended, it could only be 100 meters. In other words, if Kilda's attack could reach 100 meters away, Noah would not be able to nullify it. Luckily, Kildas only threw a heavy punch, which could only reach a distance of 2 to 3 meters. Noah was able to use the magic knight's sword to extend the distance and dodge the attack. This sword's magic effect is really rare. Kildas exclaimed and smiled at Noah. Well, it's good that you're fine. Oh right, do you still want to continue? No need. Noah shook his head and looked at Kildas. I only wanted to fight you because I wanted to see your magic. Magic? Everyone, including Kildas, was stunned. Superior grade destruction spell shatter. Noah looked straight into Kildas's eyes. Just now you used this magic to shatter my slash, didn't you? So you challenged me because you were curious about my magic? Kildas didn't know whether to laugh or cry at first, but then he laughed openly. That's right. My shatter can shatter the atomic bonds of anything it comes in contact with. It can directly break the atomic bonds from the inside. Thus, as long as it's a tangible object, even if it's a mountain or magic, I can shatter it in an instant. Shatter a mountain. Naz Gray and Elfman were shocked. It can even shatter magic. Mira, Lisanna, Elisha and Kana were shocked. As expected of a super advanced destructive spell, Noah was more or less astonished, but he was even more certain of his decision. Kildas. Noah's expression became serious as he looked straight at Kildas. Can I learn magic from you? Learn this superior grade destruction spell shatter. Suddenly, all the sounds in the surroundings disappeared in an instant. Mila, Lisanna, Elusa, and the others finally understood why Noah had challenged Kildas to a duel just to see Kildas's magic. Noah wanted to learn Kildas' magic. In the domain of destruction, there was almost no other magic that could be compared to this super high-level destruction magic. Learn magic from me? Kildas took in Noah's serious and solemn expression, and a meaningful look appeared in his eyes. President, did he agree? Noah was silent. Chapter 51. In fact, from the beginning, Noah was very hesitant about whether he should learn magic from Kildas. Noah was not very clear about the power of the superior level destruction spell Crush. However, from the fact that Kildas, who was definitely a 10 saint, was unable to fully control Crush and repeatedly broke things, causing Magnolia to have to modify because of it, one could roughly see the power of Crush. As for Noah, he was born with a powerful magic that others could not match. Once he learned magic, his strength would increase by leaps and bounds. With such a foundation, and learning a superior level destruction spell like Crush, it was easy to imagine how strong Noah's final strength would be. However, this was where the problem lay. Even Kildas was unable to properly control Crush. Once Noah learned Crush, what kind of consequences would it cause? Originally, Noah's magic was abnormally powerful. Even in the past, due to his magic going berserk, it would cause no small amount of disasters. Now, if this magic was used to use the superior level destruction spell Crush, if he was not careful and was unable to control it like Kildas, then the disaster it would cause would definitely not be comparable to Kildas' level of disaster. Noah was finally able to completely control his magic with great difficulty. However, after learning magic, there was still the possibility of it causing a disaster. How could Noah not hesitate? After all, Noah originally worked hard to train his magic control, so that he would not cause trouble for the people around him after learning magic. If learning crush would still cause the same consequences, then it would be putting the cart before the horse. Not to mention, after a sorcerer learned magic, their magic power would also increase as they became more familiar with the magic. If Noah really did not want to cause trouble for the people around him, then he would still have to work hard in the future. This was a long way to go. Thus, when he decided to learn crush from Kildas, Noah also took a long time to make up his mind. Thinking of this, Noah took a deep breath and nodded heavily. Although I have not told grandfather, I think grandfather should not oppose me. Oh, Kildas asked with great interest. Why? Because I've already made up my mind. Noah raised his head and said, once I start learning crush, I won't return to fairy tale, as long as I don't control it well. Wah! The surrounding people were all shocked. Noah, big brother Noah. Mira, Lisanna, Alusha, and the others immediately panicked. However, Noah was still staring at Kildas. The look in his eyes seemed to tell Kildas how determined he was to make this decision. Kildas rubbed his head. This is going to be troublesome. When Kildas looked very distressed, an aged voice drifted into their ears from outside the crowd. Kildas. The crowd gradually opened up a path, and Makarov walked in from the outside, appearing in the eyes of everyone present. President. The surrounding people immediately called out. Grandpa. Naz and Gray hurriedly said to Makarov. You came at the right time. Quickly persuade Noah. Grandpa. Noah looked at Makarov, who was slowly walking towards him, and remained silent. President. Kildas glanced at Makarov and shrugged his shoulders. You came at the right time. I don't know what to do. Kildas. Makarov grinned. Just agree to Noah's request. President. Mira, Lisanna, and the others all called out. Makarov immediately raised his hand and suppressed the voices of the surrounding people. He walked in front of Noah and fixed his eyes on him as he said, have you really made up your mind? Yes. Noah, who had hesitated for an entire day before making up his mind, nodded without hesitation. I've already made up my mind. Then it's fine. Makarov did not hesitate and turned his gaze to Kildas. Kildas, is there anything that's inconvenient for you? I don't mind. Kildas spread his hands like a hoodlum. Although the crush spell is very precious, because it is a super high-level destruction spell, it is also very difficult to learn and control. Usually, people who seek stability will not choose this spell. Now that there is someone who wants to learn it, I will not hide this spell. After that, Kildas changed the topic again. However, I don't have the patience to stay in one place for so long, and I don't have that much time to teach others either. So, let me go back and write down crush, so that Noah can learn it himself. That works too. Noah nodded and agreed with a smile on his face. Thank you, Kildas. Well, take it as a reward for forcing me to retreat, and an apology for almost hurting you when I accidentally got serious. Kildas turned around and waved at Noah. Then I'll go back first. The spellbook should be ready by today. You can come to my place tomorrow to get it. With that, Kildas walked out of the crowd and headed back to his house. Just like that, a storm that was neither too big nor too small was settled. Noah, have you really made up your mind? As soon as he returned to Fairy Tale, Gray couldn't wait to ask the question. You won't return to Fairy Tale before you learn how to control magic? Are you serious? That's a super powerful spell that even Kildas can't control. Lisanna's voice carried a hint of grievance. If Big Brother Noah can't learn it, then you won't come back, right? The crush spell is indeed very powerful. But didn't you say that the more powerful the spell, the better? Even Mira couldn't help but feel a little anxious. There are so many spells in the library. I don't believe that you can't find what you want. How about you think about it a little more? Alusha seemed to have an opposing opinion. I think that everyone has a point. You should think about it a little more. Naz, Kana, and Elfman all nodded, showing that they agreed with everyone's opinion. His gaze swept across the faces of his friends in front of him one by one, and Noah sighed. I say, can't you have a little more confidence in me? What Kildas can't do. Do you think that I can't do it? I said that I won't return to Fairy Tale, but I won't go anywhere. Without giving anyone a chance to explain, Noah directly explained. I just want to find a place nearby, where there is no one to stay and concentrate on practicing magic. Even if I don't return to the guild, I won't go anywhere. Nearby? Lisanna quickly asked. Is it the riverbank? No, I plan to go to the mountains nearby. Noah smiled. After all, what I want to learn is the most outstanding spell in the field of destruction crush. If I'm not careful and destroy that place, then it'll be troublesome. I don't want to personally bury the place, where I've been staying for almost 2 years. Everyone suddenly looked at each other. Have a little more confidence in me. Noah ended the conversation with this sentence. I'll definitely come back. Seeing that Noah wasn't going to change his mind, everyone had nothing to say, and could only helplessly nod. The next day, at the foot of a medium-sized mountain near Magnolia, Noah appeared, carrying a cloth bag with a knight's sword. Looking up, Noah looked at the medium-sized mountain in front of him and raised his hand. Looking closely, in Noah's hand, there was a pile of paper full of words lying on top of it. Noah slightly raised the corner of his mouth and walked towards the mountain in front of him. Chapter 52. Magnolia, Fairy Tale. Pushing open the doors of the guild, Mira, Elfman, and Lisa walked in and greeted their companions in the guild. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The elders of the guild also greeted him casually, following which, they continued to chat and joke around. It's a little late today. Alyssa, who was sitting at a wooden table and eating a strawberry cake, said in boredom. Usually, you guys would be here by now. It's all because of Elfman. Mira glared at Elfman with a dissatisfied expression. If Elfman hadn't spilled our breakfast, we would have been here long ago. Ugh. Elfman lowered his head. Undoubtedly, he was so big, but he acted as if he was bullied. I just wanted to eat my breakfast quickly. Luckily, it's just breakfast. It'll be fine after a simple meal. Lisanna tilted her head and smiled cutely. But if Big Sis Mira didn't see that there wasn't much time left, and decided to cook, I would have been even later. Mira can cook. Alessia seemed to be shocked and stood up in surprise. Mira can cook? Are you trying to pick a fight? You stubborn woman. Mira laughed sinisterly. I couldn't find a chance to teach you a lesson. Today I'll beat you to the ground. I'm the one who made you cry. Alessia glared back. I've tolerated you for a long time. Today I'll teach you a lesson. After saying that, the two of them immediately stood up aggressively. They even bumped their heads together, causing Lisanna to sigh and complain. What do you mean you couldn't find a chance and tolerated me for a long time? Don't you guys fight every day? Are they fighting every day? Kana rubbed her forehead and looked into the distance. It's the same over there. As soon as Kana finished her words, a series of crackling sounds could be heard. You stepped on me. Hang your eyes. You're blocking my way. Lower your eyes. Naz's and Gray's heads collided fiercely as they glared at each other. They looked like they were about to fight at any time. It was simply a replica of Mira and Alessia. Hey, can't you guys grow up a little? Kana said in a bad mood. If you quarrel and bicker every day, people will think that you have not grown up. It's time for you to be more mature like Noah. Halfway through her sentence, Karna's voice gradually became softer. When she mentioned the last name, her voice directly disappeared. Noah. Naz and Gray, who originally looked like they could fight at any time, had their expressions sunk at the same time. They didn't say anything. The sinister atmosphere around Mira and Alessia also disappeared. They both snorted and turned their heads away, not saying a word. Big brother Noah. Lisanna's expression was a little depressed as she forced a smile. I almost forgot that Big Brother Noah isn't in the guild. I was just thinking if I should go and wake him up. No one answered. Everyone was silent, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become more or less heavy. That guy. Mira bit her lips and said in a slightly resentful tone. He decided that kind of thing on his own. He didn't even think about how the people on our side would feel. Well, big sister Mira, don't blame big brother Noah. Lisanna collected her emotions and hugged Myra's arm. After all, big brother Noah is only nearby. We can go and see him at any time. That's what he said. Alusha asked. Do any of you know where Noah went to train? Yesterday, he said he was going to a nearby mountain. Gray said in a casual tone as he casually took off his clothes. But he didn't say which mountain it was. Doesn't that mean we can't find him? Mira frowned and looked in the direction of the bar. Guildmaster, do you know where Noah is? Who knows? Makarov, who was drinking at the bar, was the least concerned about it. He said weakly. Anyway, he'll be back when it's time. Until then, let's take our time. Before Makarov could finish his sentence, something happened that ruthlessly interrupted him. Boom! An earth-shattering sound suddenly reverberated throughout the sky of Magnolia, turning into an echo that reverberated throughout the fairy tale guild. Ah! Many girls in the guild screamed, and the others all cried out in alarm. What's wrong? Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha all stood up abruptly. What's going on? This manna. Makarov, who was sitting leisurely at the bar, also stood up. His lazy expression instantly turned serious as he ran out. Seeing Makarov run out, Mira and the others looked at each other and ran out as well. Huff, 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 huff. Almost everyone in Fairy Tale ran out of the guild and followed behind Makarov. They ran along the street in a certain direction. After passing through 2 streets and many tall buildings, Makarov led the members of Fairy Tale out of Magnolia. After an unknown amount of time, the scene in front of them gradually widened, and the number of buildings in the surroundings decreased. The members of Fairy Tale also arrived at the wilderness and continued to run forward. Undoubtedly Makarov, who had been running at the front, was already old, but his face was not red nor was he out of breath. When he saw a figure appear in front of him, he was startled and stopped. Kildas? Oh! Kildas turned around and saw that Makarov had brought the entire fairy tale over. His eyes widened in shock. Why are you all here? How could we not come with such a big commotion? Mira replied bluntly. By the way, what's going on? What's going on? Kildas let out a rare sigh and let them go. Why don't you see for yourself? As Kildas moved aside, the members of Fairy Tale subconsciously gathered their gazes in front of them. Pa! The sound of something falling to the ground could be heard. However, no one cared about what it was that had fallen to the ground. Everyone present, including Makarov, was stunned on the spot. Their faces were full of shock. This was because in front of them there was a pile of rubble. Of course, if it was just a pile of rubble, they would not be in such a state. The problem was that if everyone remembered correctly, the location of the pile of rubble should have been a mountain. But now the mountain was gone. No, it should not be said that the mountain was gone. It should be said that the mountain was broken. That pile of rubble was the original mountain. What's going on? Lisanna asked in a daze. Where's the mountain? No one answered Lisanna's question. Obviously, no one was able to recover from their shock. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment a light cough could be heard. At the top of the pile of rubble, a hand came out and pushed away all the rubble. Then a head popped out and coughed nonstop. Damn it. It's hard to control. Seeing the person coming out from the top of the pile of rubble, everyone was stunned. Noah. Noah looked at the dumbfounded crowd, and his expression became awkward. I didn't do it on purpose. For a moment no one could speak. Chapter 53. While the number of mountains around Magnolia couldn't be considered many, they definitely weren't few either. If they were connected into a mountain range, they would be able to encircle Magnolia 20 to 30 times. However, even so, the sudden disappearance of a mountain still attracted the attention of many townsfolk. That was why Villa Magnolia was even noisier than usual these past 2 days. Almost everywhere, one could hear people talking about the disappearance of a mountain. They were so excited about it that it was reduced to idle chatter after meals. While everyone in Magnolia was talking about this matter, the culprit behind it all appeared in the wilderness not far from Magnolia. Noah stood in the open field with his eyes closed, motionless, like a statue, fixed in place. Not far away, Mira and Lisanna, who had been here for quite some time, were quietly watching this scene. Ever since he turned the nearby mountain into a pile of rubble 2 days ago, Noah no longer dared to find a random mountain to stay in. Instead, he found a place where no one would come under normal circumstances, and built a simple stone house to stay in. Noah knew that he was born with a physique that was different from ordinary people. Not only was his body immune to all negative powers and side effects, but he was also able to absorb powers that didn't belong to him but entered his body. He was also able to recover his mana on his own. He also possessed mana that others couldn't match and extraordinary senses. Other things aside, just his extraordinary mana meant that once Noah learned magic, his strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds. Furthermore, the magic that Noah had chosen to use was the superior level destruction magic Crush. Using such a powerful magic to cast Crush, the power of Crush was absolutely astonishing. Undoubtedly, Noah knew that he had miscalculated. In the end, Noah still underestimated himself. He really didn't think that he would be able to turn an entire mountain into rubble after learning Crush for less than a day. If he had known that this would happen, Noah definitely wouldn't have chosen to stay in a mountain. Instead, he would have found a deserted place to stay. Of course, even if this was the case, Noah's path to learning magic could not be said to be peaceful. If someone happened to pass by here, they would definitely be shocked. Because in this extremely vast and uninhabited wilderness, on the ground, there were many deep pits of various sizes. The large ones were at least 200 to 300 meters in diameter, while the small ones were at least 40 to 50 meters in diameter. It was as if they were directly hit by a continuous stream of meteorites. It was extremely shocking. These deep craters were the result of Noah's practice of Crush over the past 2 days, or when he was unable to control Crush. It was also because of these craters that Mira and Lisanna, who understood that Noah, who had learned Crush, would not be able to hide from them, were able to easily find him. Looking at Noah standing there motionless, Lisanna was a little confused. What is Big Brother Noah doing? This, Mira pondered for a moment before replying. If I'm not wrong, that guy should be familiarizing himself with the sensation of Crush, right? The sensation of Crush ? Lisanna was even more confused, her face full of confusion. When people clench their fists and exert strength, isn't it very easy to feel that their clenched fists are filled with strength? Mira explained. It's the same for magic. If magic is compared to strength, when a sorcerer uses magic, they will definitely be able to feel their magic converging in some way. Noah is now familiarizing himself with the sensation of activating magic. What's the point of doing this? Lisanna blinked. Isn't it fine as long as he can use magic? Why does he have to familiarize himself with the sensation of activating magic? Of course, other people wouldn't do this for nothing, but Noah does, Mira said gloatingly. I think he must want to familiarize himself with the sensation of activating magic. That way, even if he can't control it, he can react in time and make a response. Just like before, if Noah had run out of the mountain in time, when he lost control of his magic, the mountain wouldn't have disappeared. Well, but this is also good for him. Mira crossed her arms in front of her chest. As long as he can familiarize himself with the sensation of activating magic and grasp that moment, it will be helpful to his cultivation of controlling magic. Is that so? Lisanna muttered, her voice full of hesitation. I originally wanted to see Big Brother Noah, but now he's working hard on his cultivation. What should I do? What do you mean what should we do? Can't we just go directly? Mira didn't have as many concerns as Lisanna, and walked directly in the direction of Noah. Wait, big sister Mira. Really? Lisanna hurriedly followed. In front of her, Noah closed his eyes and stood quietly. Within Noah's body, magic flowed methodically under Noah's control and slowly grew stronger. Feeling the magic power in his body, Noah nodded inwardly. Recalling how to use Crush, he immediately wanted to use it. At this moment, the sound of Mira and Lisanna's footsteps entered Noah's ears. He was about to cast a spell when he heard them. It was also at this moment that the magic in Noah's body began to flow faster. In a short moment, It was like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins and flowed, according to the method of activating the magic that Noah was about to use. Not good. Noah was alarmed. This was the precursor to the activation of Crush. Sensing this, Noah hurriedly turned his head and shouted at Mira and Lisanna, "Don't come over." Mira and Lisanna both froze at the same time and reflexively stopped in their tracks. At the same time, a dazzling light burst out from Noah's body and expanded in all directions like a shockwave. Seeing the shockwave of light rush towards them, Mira and Lisanna turned pale with fright. In their hurry, they only had time to raise their hands to block in front of their eyes before their slender bodies were swallowed up by the dazzling light. Boom! A huge sound suddenly rang out. That was the sound of the ground being covered by the light from Noah's body, turning into a pile of rubble that was neither too big nor too small, creating a deep crater. After a while, the light dissipated. Standing in the crater, Noah's heartbeat suddenly sped up. Could it be that Mira and Lisanna had been? What's going on? That gave me a fright. Fortunately, the nightmare that he had imagined did not come. Mira and Lisanna were still standing in the same place. Although there was shock on their faces, they were not injured, nor were they missing an arm or a leg. Mira, Lisanna. Only then did Noah put down the huge rock in his heart. But when he thought of the worst-case scenario, his face immediately tensed up. However, before Noah could reprimand the two of them, something unexpected happened. Rip! With a tearing sound, pieces of cloth of different colors flew off from Mira and Lisanna's bodies. Those were Mira and Lisanna's clothes. In the next moment, two equally tender, fair, and charming bodies were exposed to the sunlight without any obstruction. They were also exposed to Noah's eyes, becoming a beautiful scene that Noah would never forget for the rest of his life. Looking at the two charming and tender bodies in front of him, Noah's eyes widened, and his mouth slowly opened wide. Mira and Lisanna felt a chill run down their spines. They lowered their heads and looked at their own bodies. When that familiar fair and delicate figure entered their field of vision, the two girls' minds went blank, and their faces flushed red in a second. A few seconds later, two screams resounded above the crater-filled field for a long time. Chapter 54. Bang! A ferocious roar and a muffled sound that was loud enough to turn into an echo reverberated in the wilderness that was filled with craters. At the same time, in one of the craters of different sizes, a burst of thick smoke and dust filled the air like an explosion. A figure flew out of the thick smoke and dust. After flying for more than 10 meters, he stopped and stood firmly on the ground, but his figure was in a rather sorry state. It was only natural that he looked wretched. If one had to describe his current situation, it would be that he was being hunted down. Moreover, it was the kind that couldn't fight back. Under such circumstances, the one who attacked him was an opponent whose strength was far inferior to his. How could Noah not be in a difficult situation? When the smoke and dust dispersed, the scene in the crater was exposed to the air. There, Mira had one hand in front of her chest, blocking a part of her fair and tender body, but it was only able to block her chest. Her other hand had completely transformed into a malevolent demonic arm, surging with a dark aura, showing Myra's angry and bashful expression. Behind her, Lisanna was squatting on the ground. Her body was curled up into a ball, completely protecting her tender body. There were tears at the corners of her eyes, as if she had been bullied. Noah felt a sense of guilt rise in his heart. Seeing that Mira was about to charge over again, Noah hurriedly shouted, "Wait. Wait. What? What are you doing? Are you trying to kill me? So, do you want to leave behind your last words?" Myra's cheeks maintained a bright red state. Her eyes were also a little moist, but she forced herself to put on a fierce expression. In the end, it made Mira appear as though she had been wronged, causing Noah's heart to involuntarily tremble. His gaze involuntarily once again drifted to Myra's delicate body that was tinged with red. "You're still looking." Myra's hands tightened in front of her chest. Her expression was one of extreme shame and anger. "Do you really want to die?" I didn't mean that." Noah hurriedly turned his head away. Just as he was about to say something, he heard Mira say this. I only have one question for you. Mira bit her lips and her voice began to soften. You saw it, right? Noah's body immediately stiffened. He couldn't help but recall the beautiful scene he had just seen. From a certain perspective, it was absolutely unforgettable. Fair skin, slender waist, beautiful curves, tender body, and the large breasts that had just begun to develop, and the heart-trembling little red. Noah, who had never had such an experience before, blushed as expected. His eyes were filled with turbulent emotions, causing tears to well up in Myra's eyes. You really did see it all? No. Wait. Noah could only be at a loss. His mind was in a mess as he tried to defend himself. But in fact, it was just nonsense. In the end, it's not my fault. You were the ones who approached it without permission. I don't want to see that kind of thing. You don't want to see something like that? Myra's face, which was still filled with shyness a second ago, immediately darkened. The shyness in her heart had all turned into anger. Since that's the case, then go to hell. Wait. Looking at the scene of Mira raising her hand that had turned into a demonic arm and rushing towards him, Noah could only dodge in a panic. However, in a situation where he was in the wrong and couldn't fight back, and Noah and Myra's strength were similar, Noah was undoubtedly at an absolute disadvantage. He could only be described as pathetic when he tried to dodge. Fortunately, Myra's seemingly violent attacks didn't seem to carry much killing intent. She was just waving her hands randomly. Although she forced Noah into a sorry state, it didn't pose much of a threat. However, for Noah, the process was rather torturous. It wasn't that Noah was afraid of being attacked by Mira. It was just that Mira was completely naked, and even the slightest movement would reveal a lot of her fair skin. Not to mention, Mira was only using one hand to block in front of Noah. Her actions were frantic as she chased after Noah. Basically, she was continuously taking advantage of him. In other words, Noah could be said to be in pain and pleasure at the same time. On the other hand, Lisanna, who had been crouching on the ground, was the first to notice this. She hurriedly shouted at Mira. Sister Mira, your body. Mira, who was about to give Noah a head-on attack, finally realized that she was in trouble. She hurriedly retracted her hand and covered her upper body and lower body. Noah, I hate you. Hearing that, Noah could only turn his head away and try his best not to look at Mira and Lisanna. His face was full of distress. I really didn't do it on purpose. After the commotion, Mira picked up her and Lisanna's clothes that had been reduced to shreds. Using some unknown method, she wove a large number of shreds into something that resembled a swimsuit and put it on with Lisanna. At this moment, Strauss's white-haired sisters were staring at Noah with gazes that seemed to be able to pierce through people. One had a ferocious expression, while the other had puffed up her cheeks and looked aggrieved. This made Noah, who was standing in front of Mira and Lisanna, feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. To be honest, ever since he lost control of his emotions due to his mana, Noah had become very good at controlling his emotions. However, even with that being the case, Noah was still helpless in the face of such a situation. After all, this was the first time Noah had encountered something like this. Therefore, this was also the first time Noah had put himself in such a difficult position. Brother Noah, Lisanna said sternly after a while, is there anything else you want to explain? I only want to say that everything was an accident. Noah concluded with a single sentence, trying his best to explain himself. But I really did see it. If you want to blame me, I have nothing to say. Wah! What did you really see? Don't you know how to cover it up? Mira felt embarrassed and grimaced. In any case, if you dare tell a fourth person about what happened today, Noah, you know the consequences. As she spoke, Mira ticked her fingers. This action didn't make Noah feel threatened in the slightest, but he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only raise his hands and surrender. Alright, don't worry. I'll quickly forget about what happened today. Forget. What surprised Noah was that not only did Mira and Lisanna's expressions not ease up, they even seemed a little angry. This made Noah feel a little uneasy. Wah! What? Did I say something wrong? Brother Noah, Lisanna said in a reproachful manner. Forget about what happened because of an accident. That's an irresponsible way of saying it. You're exaggerating, right? Noah laughed awkwardly. Humph. Mira snorted coldly and turned her head away. She looked even angrier than when Noah had seen her naked body. This made Noah feel very conflicted. Can't I forget? Girls are really hard to please. Lisanna took advantage of this time to sneak to Noah's side and whisper something that almost made Noah fall over. If that's the case, brother Noah, you'll have to make me your bride in the future. Bride? Noah raised his voice to the point where it could be heard as an echo. New bride? When Mira heard Noah call her that, she was stunned for a moment before her entire face turned fiery red. She stuttered. Wah! What bride? You just want to see my naked body, and you want me to be your bride? You! Don't be too naive. I won't be fooled. Looking at Myra's stuttering and flustered appearance, Noah could only smile bitterly. Lisanna, on the other hand, laughed mischievously and continued to whisper in Noah's ear. You can't forget what I said, brother. Noah. Brother. This sentence made the bitter smile on Noah's face become even more pronounced. Chapter 55. Like the surface of the moon, Noah quietly stood in the wilderness with his eyes closed. Like a stone statue, he did not move. Wang! At a certain moment, Noah's body suddenly trembled. Traces of magic rose from every part of his body like leaking air, turning into a stream of air that gradually grew stronger. A trace of redness appeared on Noah's face. His body also tensed up. Both his fists were tightly clenched, as if he was enduring something. Even though his body was constantly trembling, he did not open his eyes and endured. Until 10 minutes later, the magic leaking from Noah's body had completely turned into a turbulent flow, wrapping around Noah's body, causing the air around Noah to tremble. Just like that, after another 10 minutes, Noah finally couldn't control the mana that was surging in his body, causing it to expand out of his body like a storm. Dong! Amidst a loud sound, the violent impact blew out in all directions with Noah as the center. It swept through the surrounding wisps of air, and every inch of the land. Pung! With Noah as the center, the ground within 100 meters of him collapsed without warning, as if it had suddenly been completely cut open, turning into pieces of gravel. Some flew into the sky, some fell to the ground, stirring up countless clouds of dust that spread in all directions. This scene lasted for a long time. Sigh. After everything calmed down, Noah opened his eyes, looked at the newly formed large holes around him, and sighed. When will I be able to completely control the superior grade destruction magic crush? The negativity only lasted for a while. After a while, Noah pulled himself together. Even Gildas was not able to completely control it. How can it be that easy for me to control it in just 5 days? Not to mention, I have only just learned how to use crush. I still need to continuously practice, cultivate, and strengthen myself. Learning how to use magic did not mean that one had succeeded. Being able to use a magic shooter's magic was one thing. But in the days to come, one still needed to constantly practice. After all, magic that had just been learned was undoubtedly the weakest. Only by continuously strengthening one's magic and being proficient in using one's magic could one make magic more powerful. Take Gildas for example. When he first learned crush, he certainly could not be like Noah, who could crush a mountain when he lost control. At the very beginning, being able to crush rocks was already a very good result. Noah was the same. Now, Noah had only just learned how to use crush. Although the power of crush was so strong because of his powerful magic, it was still just the beginning. Needless to say, the superior grade destruction spell Shatter could not only shatter rocks and the like. When trained to the highest level, even magic spells could be shattered, and even human bodies could be directly shattered, burying the opponent in an instant. This was the terrifying aspect of the superior grade destruction magic crush. Noah was now only relying on his powerful magic to use crush. It could destroy the ground, mountains, buildings, and so on. But if he wanted to reach the realm of being able to crush magic, and even a person in an instant, It was still too early. However, if I can't even control it to this extent, when I practice crush, won't it be even more difficult to control it? Noah closed his eyes again. I have to perfect control of this stage of crush as soon as possible. Most importantly, Noah did not want to use his crush on something like tearing up clothes. Thanks to the incident of him tearing up Myra's and Lisana's clothes 3 days ago, now, even if Mira and Lisana came to see him, they would not come within 5 meters of him. Moreover, once there was any sign of trouble, they would immediately run away, which was quite a blow to Noah. He was not a gentleman. Could it be that he would take the initiative to tear up their clothes? Thinking of this, Noah once again made up his mind. I have to perfect control of this stage of crush as soon as possible. However, just as he finished speaking, not far away, a wave of chaotic shouts rang out. Noah! Noah opened his eyes, turned his head, and looked in the direction of the sound. He saw Mira, Lisana, Alusha, Naz, Gray and the rest running in his direction. Even Karna and Elfman came, their faces filled with shock, which made Noah curious. What was going on? The madly running companions originally wanted to gather around Noah, but Mira and Lisana stopped precisely when they were 5 meters away from Noah, and hurriedly stopped everyone. Wait! Don't go near Noah. Huh? The group of companions all stopped in their tracks, looking at Mira and Lisana with puzzled expressions. It's too dangerous, Mira said directly, and shot a disdainful glance at Noah. This person hasn't completely learned how to control crush. It's too dangerous to go near him. The group of companions suddenly understood. Of course, they only thought that Mira was only referring to the danger that Noah's crush would put them in. But they did not know that the danger Mira was referring to was not them, but the clothes on their bodies. Obviously, Mira had completely treated Noah's crush as a magic used to tear up clothes. Regarding this, Noah did not have any room to explain, and could only ask the group with a puzzled mood. What are you all in such a hurry for? Right. Gray remembered the reason for his visit. Listen to me, Noah, something big has happened. Right. Naz and Elfman both jumped up and down, looking especially agitated. Laxus. Hearing this somewhat unexpected name, Noah frowned, and turned his gaze towards Alusha's direction. Actually, 5 days ago, after you came out to train, the guild leader announced something in the guild. Alusha tacitly understood the doubts in Noah's heart, and nodded her head to answer. Just 5 days ago, the guild leader announced the start of this year's S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test? Noah stared blankly there. S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. Just like the literal meaning of the name. It was a test that was held internally by the guild, and only targeted at the members of the guild. Moreover, only magic shooters approved by the guild leader had the qualifications to participate. If one passed the S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test, then the magic shooter would be promoted to an S-Rank Magic Shooter, and would have the qualifications to accept the extremely difficult missions on the second floor of the Fairy Tale Guild. Noah really did not expect that on the day he left the guild, the Fairy Tale would hold an S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. It was really too coincidental. At this time, Noah suddenly remembered. Just now, Naz and the others seemed to have mentioned Laxus, right? At this time, they mentioned the S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test, and also mentioned Laxus. Could it be? Noah's gaze became slightly serious. Every year, only one person can pass the S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test. Otherwise, there would not be a single person. Could it be that the person who passed this year's S-Rank Magic Shooter Advancement Test is? Mira and Alusha looked at each other and nodded, proving Noah's conjecture to be correct. The person who passed this year is Laxus. Noah was silent. Laxus, this brother in name, who hated the weak and only acknowledged the strong, had finally become an S-Rank Magic Shooter? A 17-year-old S-Rank Magic Shooter. Should it be said as expected of him? Noah. Knowing that the relationship between Noah and Laxus was somewhat tense, Mira, Lisana, Alusha, and the others looked at Noah with some worry. Noah faintly smiled and raised his head to look at the sky, the expression in his eyes beginning to soar. Losing to anyone is fine, but I absolutely cannot lose to him. Chapter 56. The wind blew quietly from the distant horizon, adding a hint of coolness to the air. Magnolia was still standing in the middle of the forest and mountains. From time to time, the shouts of the townsfolk could be heard. Nothing had changed. It was still as lively as before. Now that it was autumn, the temperature of Magnolia had dropped a lot, causing the town to feel a little chilly. Of course, if there wasn't a trace of wind, the humid weather would still make people feel suffocated. Rustle, rustle. In a forest outside of Magnolia, which was even hotter, the faint sound of leaves rustling could be heard from a certain corner. The rustling sound grew louder and louder, as if something was approaching. Whoosh! In the next second, a figure suddenly appeared in the forest. It was running at an extremely high speed, accompanied by a subtle sound of breaking air. It was a young man of about 17 years old, barefoot and bare-chested, wearing only shorts. At this moment, the young man was holding up a boulder that was several times larger than his entire body. His speed was even faster than that of a cheetah, as he trampled on the ground of the mountain forest. While causing the earth to tremble, he ran madly through the mountain forest, nimbly avoiding the trees and obstacles that came his way as he continued to run. Whoosh! After a long while, the young man finally stopped his footsteps and casually threw the huge rock that was raised above his head to the side. Dong! The boulder crashed to the side, crushing the surrounding branches and grass. It also smashed a hole in the ground, stirring up some smoke and dust. After doing all this, the young man raised his head and looked at the sky. His face was no longer young and was starting to mature. His eyes were so deep that they seemed to be able to suck people in under the sunlight. This was a face that had taken 4 whole years to grow. Time flew. In the blink of an eye, 4 years had passed. Noah, who was already 17 years old, had not only grown in height and appearance, but he had also grown in strength that no one knew the limits of except for him. Ever since Noah received the news that Loxus had passed the S-rank magic shooter advancement test and was promoted to an S-rank magic shooter, not only had he not returned to Fairy Tale, but he had also been challenging his limits almost every day. In these 4 years, Noah had not only been training his magic, physical ability, swordsmanship, fighting ability, mana control, even the flexibility, acuity, reflexes, senses, and other aspects of the body were constantly trained to challenge the limits of their limits. It was not an exaggeration to say that Noah's strength had undergone a drastic change compared to 4 years ago. At the very least, Noah was confident that if he had the chance to fight the Noah from 4 years ago, he would be able to defeat the Noah from 4 years ago without using any destructive spells or superb sword skills. In fact, he wouldn't even need to move half a step. He would be able to defeat the Noah from 4 years ago with just a swing of his fist. This was only a portion of Noah's current strength. As for magic, glancing at the boulder beside him, Noah reached out his hand and lightly pressed on it. He then lifted his feet and walked forward, his figure gradually disappearing into the forest. Whong! After Noah's figure disappeared into the forest, the boulder that was several times bigger than Noah's body suddenly flashed with light. Along the cracks, the entire boulder seemed to be lined up neatly in a grid. Then pung! In the midst of the muffled sound, along the neatly arranged lines, the boulder seemed to have exploded, turning into neat cubes that fell to the ground, once again stirring up a lot of smoke and dust. In the past 4 years, although Noah had been cultivating, he did not have a fixed place. Sometimes it was a mountain, sometimes it was a lake, sometimes it was a river, sometimes it was a forest, sometimes it was a deep valley or an abyss. Just like that, Noah continued his cultivation as he wandered in various peaceful environments and dangerous places without a fixed residence. However, even if the place was different, Noah had never left the range where he could see Magnolia. Even if he went deep into the dangerous forest and fought with all kinds of monsters to hone his combat experience, Noah would find a high place every day to take a look at Magnolia and take a look at the fairy's tale. Also, because he did not go too far from Magnolia, in the past 4 years, Mira, Lisanna, and Alicia could find traces of Noah from time to time. Sometimes it was a group. Sometimes it was an individual. Sometimes it was a group. Sometimes it was only 2 or 3 people. In short, every once in a while, Noah could always see his childhood friends, so his days were not boring. After all, even the longest time they did not see each other was only half a year. Of course, the shortest time they did not see each other was more than 2 or 3 months. From time to time, he would gather with his childhood friends, play around and have fun. Each time did not exceed a day. Other than that, there was only training, and training. In this life of training, Noah completed these 4 years of cultivation. Noah put on a simple white shirt, black trousers, and a white coat that went past his thighs. He turned his head and looked in the direction of Magnolia. The familiar guild building seemed to appear in his eyes. After a while, he murmured to himself, "That's right. It's time to go back, right?" As he said this, Noah clenched his fist and spread out his hand. A fog-like white light rose from it and rolled back and forth. Only those who were familiar with the high-grade destructive spell Crush would know that if this fog-like white light accidentally touched something, the thing that touched it would definitely be smashed to pieces. Noah allowed such a dangerous thing to roll back and forth on his palm, and skillfully let the light dim. After a while he clenched his fist tightly. In fact, since a year ago, Noah's crush had never gone out of control. However, for the sake of conservatism, Noah still trained Crush for an entire year. Now Noah had 100% confidence to make such a declaration. Even Kilda's control of Crush is not as good as mine. After leaving such a declaration, Noah finally could not suppress the feelings of homesickness in his heart. On his face, an excited smile that he had not seen for a long time appeared. He reached out, grabbed the cloth bag that contained the knight's sword, and walked towards Magnolia. Magnolia, Fairy's Tale. Looking at the familiar building in front of him, Noah was stunned for a long time. For years. He had not returned for a full 4 years. Even if 4 years had passed, Fairy's Tale still did not change much. Only the door seemed to have been changed a few times. Thinking about it, it should not have been destroyed by nature, but by those troublemakers, right? Taking a deep breath, Noah suppressed the feelings in his heart. He reached out and pushed open the door of the guild. The sun had just risen not long ago. Therefore, there was no one in the first floor of the guild's bar. Noah looked at the familiar scene and walked around the bar. Then, he walked up the stairs to the 3rd floor and reached the door of his room. He reached out and pushed it open. What entered his eyes was a scene that completely overlapped with the scene in his memory. Not even the slightest bit of change. But there was not a speck of dust. Just like when Noah had just left. Noah stood at the door and looked for a long time. After a long while, a voice gently reverberated in this simple and crude room. "I'm back." Chapter 57. Who? The moment he opened the window, a cool breeze blew into Noah's face, blowing the bangs in front of Noah's forehead. Noah took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling very comfortable, and his heart seemed to have melted. 4 years had passed. He had finally returned to this place. Did he miss it? Perhaps there was. However, Noah was more moved. Undoubtedly, he had not been back for 4 years. The decoration of Noah's room was exactly the same as when he had just left. There was not even a speck of dust. Even the clothes in the wardrobe that belonged to 4 years ago and could not be worn now were still arranged properly. What did this mean? It meant that even if Noah was not in Fairy Tale for 4 years, there was still someone who came to clean his room almost every day, but did not touch his things without permission. Everything was maintained exactly the same as when he had left. Knowing this, how could Noah not be moved? Of course, Noah could guess who had been cleaning his room for more than 4 years. Really, a beautiful figure that he had not seen for a long time appeared in his mind. Noah could not help but have a smile on his face. "I have to thank her properly." Just when Noah was immersed in his memories and feeling moved, a somewhat uncertain and full of disbelief voice echoed behind Noah's back. "Noah, brother?" Hearing this familiar yet strange voice, Noah almost reflexively turned around and looked behind him. There an extremely beautiful girl was standing there. It was a cute and delicate young girl, who was about 15 or 16 years old. She had snow-white soft shoulder-length hair, and was as white as snow. The girl stood at the door, looking at Noah with a very hesitant and somewhat excited expression. Her voice was slightly trembling as it squeezed out from her throat. "Brother Noah, is that you?" Seeing the girl, who had changed quite a bit from the familiar figure in his memories, call out to him with a familiar tone and address, Noah only stared at her, his expression becoming more and more gentle. "Although I have left the guild for 4 years, if I remember correctly, you found me in the wilderness half a year ago. You should be able to recognize me, right?" Saying this, Noah called out the name of the extremely beautiful girl in front of him. "Lisanna." Lisanna finally confirmed that the person in front of her was the owner of this room. All the hesitation and uncertainty on her delicate face turned into excitement, and she did not hesitate to throw herself at Noah. "Brother Noah." Noah did not expect her to throw herself at him, and was hugged so tightly that he almost fell to the ground. However, she didn't care about that at all. She hugged Noah with all her might, rubbing her little face against his chest. "Brother Noah, you're finally back. That's great. That's great." Feeling the soft and delicate body of the girl in his embrace through close proximity, Noah's heart, that hadn't wavered in the past 4 years, was fiercely shaken for a few seconds. Even 4 years ago, when she was still very close to Noah, the most she did was hold Noah's hand and hug Noah's arm. Although she would sometimes act spoiled and make Noah piggyback her, she had never hugged Noah. So without a doubt, this was the first time she had hugged Noah so fiercely, allowing Noah to hug her tightly. How could Noah, who had never been so close to a girl before, he didn't know about Mila and Lisanna kissing him, not be shaken? Moreover, the current Lisanna could not be compared to the Lisanna of the past. At the very least, Noah, who was hugged tightly by Lisanna, could clearly feel that Lisanna had begun to develop. Hidden under her clothes, there was a certain degree of softness. I know you're happy. I'm happy too," Noah said somewhat awkwardly. "But you don't have to be so excited, right? Didn't we just meet half a year ago? You also know that we haven't seen each other for half a year." Lisanna raised her head from Noah's embrace and stared straight at Noah with a somewhat angry expression. "We used to be together every day, but we've only seen each other less than 10 times in the past 4 years. You won't let me get excited." All right, I know." Noah could only surrender. Suppressing the rare wavering in his heart, he stretched out his hand and gently stroked Lisanna's beautiful white hair like he did when they were children. "I'm back. Welcome back." Lisanna smiled happily and buried her face in Noah's embrace once more. "It really is Big Brother Noah's scent. I miss it so much. So you even remember my scent?" Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he gently pushed the dissatisfied Lisanna away and looked around his clean room. "Lass, you've been cleaning my room for the past 4 years, right?" "Yes." Lisanna didn't hide it and nodded. When Big Brother Noah wasn't around, Big Sister Elisha didn't stay in the guild often and went out to work. Big Brother Elfie was playing with Naz and Gray, and Big Sister Elisha either went out to work like Big Sister Elisha or went to the forest to train. I was the only one who was bored, so I came to clean when I had nothing to do to pass the time. "I see." Noah looked at Lisanna, who still refused to let go of him, and sized her up. "You've changed a lot too. Is that so?" Lisanna smiled a little embarrassedly, but she didn't shift her gaze away and continued to stare at Noah. "Have I become more feminine than before?" "You're still the same as before. You're so mischievous." Noah couldn't help but knock her on the head. When she clutched her head and cried out, he broke free from her embrace and walked out of the room. Let's go say hi to everyone." "Wait, Big Brother Noah." Lisanna hurriedly chased after him and walked out of the room with Noah, heading towards the bar on the first floor. Just as he arrived at the bar on the first floor, Noah heard the noise that he hadn't heard in a long time. Standing at the top of the stairs, Noah looked at the members of the guild, who were laughing and chatting in groups of 2s and 3s, and a sense of belonging rose in his heart. As expected, Fairy Tale was still the best. "Everyone!" Lisanna was already shouting at everyone in the guild. "Quick, look who's back." Hearing that, Everyone in the guild stopped what they were doing and looked towards the stairs. When they saw the smiling youth standing beside Lysana, everyone's eyes widened. Some of the old guild members who had been in Fairy Tale 4 years ago had their mouths wide open in shock. Some were rubbing their eyes as if they were worried that they had recognized the wrong person. As for the rookies who had joined Fairy Tale in the past 4 years, they looked at the seniors around them with blank expressions. The noisy guild fell silent in about 10 seconds. 10 seconds later. Noah. That's Noah, right? It's Noah. Noah's back. Noah's back. The veteran members who knew Noah all cheered. Noah. Who's Noah? The newcomers who didn't know Noah all looked at each other. Noah. In the next moment, a youth around the same age as Lysana with cherry-colored hair and a scarf around his neck rushed out from the crowd. He raised his flaming fist and rushed towards Noah excitedly. Let's have a showdown. Chapter 58. Let's settle this once and for all. What a familiar voice. What a familiar line. What a familiar figure. What a familiar scene. This nostalgic scene completely dispelled Noah's slight discomfort after not coming back for 4 years, causing the corners of Noah's mouth to slowly curl up. As if it had just happened yesterday. As if it had just happened yesterday. Noah stretched out his hand, clenched his fist, and directly punched the cherry-haired youth's abdomen at a speed many times faster than the speed of the incoming cherry-haired youth. Bang! Ow! Amidst a strange scream, the cherry-haired youth who was hit in the abdomen by Noah had his eyes bulged, his body stiffened, and then softly fell to the ground. I just came back, and I want to have a good rest, so can we talk about this next time? Noah slowly retracted his fist, and under the speechless expression of the entire Fairy Tale Guild members, he smiled and greeted the cherry-haired youth, who was lying on the ground. Long time no see. Naz. He. Naz, who had grown a lot taller, and even his face had matured a lot, had the usual hearty smile on his face. He shouted excitedly, while holding his painful abdomen. Sure enough, it's the same as before, so strong that it's exciting. Noah smiled slightly, and just as he was about to say something, a small black shadow suddenly descended from the sky and landed beside Naz. Naz, are you okay? Huh. Noah was a little surprised, because floating beside Naz, who was lying on the ground, was a cat. It was a blue cat with a pair of white wings on its back. I'm fine. Naz jumped up from the ground energetically, rubbed his abdomen, and said to the cat with wings. This level is nothing, hubby. Hubby. Noah looked curiously at the cat with wings. You're called Hubby? Love. The blue kitten named Hubby cried out energetically. Hubby was hatched from an egg that Sling I picked up outside, not long after you left. At this time, a young man with short black hair and a Fairy Tale Guild emblem on the right side of his chest walked out from the crowd and gave Noah a big hug. He was completely naked and only wore a pair of shorts. You're finally back, you rascal. Gray. Noah gave Gray a hug as well, and then said with a smile. It's been a long time since we last met. You haven't changed at all. You're not even wearing clothes. Oh, I forgot. Gray acted as if he had just realized that he was not wearing any clothes, which made everyone laugh again. Huff. Suddenly, a delicate voice sounded, and a figure suddenly appeared behind Noah. She raised her leg and kicked fiercely in the direction of Noah. Before the delicate voice sounded, Noah felt an aura behind him. Then it turned into a whip shadow and whipped towards Noah. The chaotic wind brought by the attack also blew towards Noah's back. Noah still had a smile on his face, as if he didn't feel anything. His body seemed to be very slow, but in fact it was very fast, and he slightly stepped aside. The fierce kick mixed with the sharp wind brushed past Noah's side, and kicked past the position where Noah was originally at. Huff. At the same time, another delicate voice sounded, and another figure appeared on the other side of Noah without warning. A dazzling light flashed in her hand, and a knight's sword emerged. She held it tightly, and with a more fierce attack than the kick that just attacked Noah, she mercilessly chopped towards Noah. Ding! This time, Noah didn't even try to dodge. He directly stretched out a hand, and when the knight's sword was less than 10 centimeters away from his face, he used 2 fingers to catch the sharp blade of the sword and neutralized the attack. It was complicated to describe, but in fact, in the eyes of the guild members of Fairy Tale, they only heard 2 delicate voices in less than a second. Then, Noah moved half a step, and a leg stretched out from the right side of his body. A sharp knight's sword appeared on the left side of his body, and it was about to chop Noah's head, but it was caught by Noah's 2 fingers in front of his face. Then 2 figures appeared behind Noah. When they saw this scene clearly and understood what had just happened, the full appearance of the 2 figures behind Noah, who had attacked him, was also imprinted in everyone's eyes. Everyone's mouths were wide open. As for Noah, at this moment, his expression revealed some helplessness. "Is this how you welcome me?" The 2 figures that launched the swift kick and the sharp slash at the same time retracted their attacks. And with a leap, they appeared in front of Noah. They were 2 girls who were about the same age as Noah. They were also about 17 years old. On the left was a young girl with waist-length hair tied into a long white ponytail with a bow-like hairband. She was wearing a black vest that could only cover her huge breasts, exposing her navel and back, and a black short skirt that reached her roots. She was wearing black stockings. On the right was a girl with long red hair that reached her waist. She wore silver armor and a blue pleated skirt, and she held a knight's sword in her hand. She had the heroic spirit of a Valkyrie. Both of these girls were very familiar with Noah, but they had changed. However, just like Lisanna, they had all undergone their own changes. They were no longer little girls but true mature women. They were Mira and Alessia. "You bastard." Even though she had grown into a charming girl in all aspects, Myra's tone was still the same as before. Not only was she nasty, but she was also very fierce. Her eyes were filled with killing intent as she glared at Noah. "Do you still know how to come back?" Undoubtedly, she said this with a fierce tone, but her words sounded like a wife blaming her husband for fooling around outside. In contrast to Mira, Alessia simply put away her sword with a faint smile on her face. She looked at Noah and nodded. "It's really been a long time. You've changed a lot." "You've changed a lot as well," Noah said in a very emotional tone, especially when he inadvertently caught a glimpse of Myra's small vest that could not hide all of her fullness. "You've changed so much that I almost couldn't recognize you. Noah, don't forget about us." Beside the table, a dark-skinned, burly, white-haired man in a high school uniform stood up and smiled at Noah. "We're here too. You're back?" Beside him, a girl with long, curly black hair and wearing a swimsuit called out in a drunken manner. She hugged a large barrel of wine and drank boldly. "There's finally a decent man in this guild. You're Elfman and Kana?" Noah asked in a surprised tone. "You've changed a lot too, especially Kana. When did you learn how to drink?" Ma. Kana held her red face and laughed boldly. "Don't mind such a small matter." His gaze swept across the faces of his childhood playmates. Looking at their current appearances, and recalling the last time he saw them, Noah could only sigh at how time could change everything. At this moment, a short old man walked over from the bar and stopped in front of Noah. All the voices in the guild disappeared in an instant. Noah looked at the old man in front of him, who he hadn't seen for 4 years. The old man also looked at Noah. Their eyes were filled with undetectable excitement. After a long time, the old man smiled and spoke. "You've grown up." Noah nodded heavily and spat out a sentence that contained almost all his emotions. "I'm back, Grandpa." Chapter 59. Night. Following the memories that remained in his mind, Noah walked along a small path in Magnolia Forest. After walking for about 10 minutes, he arrived at the bank of the river. Even in the incomparably dark night, the river still flowed as quietly as it did 4 years ago. The faint but clear sound of flowing water echoed in Noah's ears, miraculously calming his heart. Standing by the bank, Noah quietly looked at the familiar river before him. What flashed in his mind was the time when he trained his mana control and swordsmanship here, as well as the time when he trained around Magnolia. As mentioned earlier, Noah was very likely to be an anomaly who was born with the appearance and intelligence of a 10-year-old. In other words, Noah, who had just turned 17 this year, had not only lived for 7 years, but he had also spent almost all of those 7 years training himself and strengthening himself. Therefore, to Noah, those 7 years were boring, but also very meaningful. That was because while Noah had been training himself, he also had his own family. That was because while Noah had been growing stronger, he also had his own companions. Therefore, even if Noah was given another chance, Noah would still spend those 7 years on the same thing without any regrets. That was something that Noah had never regretted. Immersed in his memories, Noah soon heard 2 or 3 footsteps behind him, pulling him back from his memories. Ah, it's really here. As the cheerful voice sounded, the 3 girls who had once shared the secret place with Noah appeared on the other side of the forest. Just like in the past, Mira, Lisanna, and Elisha came to Noah's side. "Why are you hiding here by yourself?" Mira crossed her arms as a provocative smile appeared on her face. "Is it because you haven't been back in the guild for too long so you're shy? There are many newbies who have only joined Fairy Tale in the past 4 years. They're all very curious about you, big brother Noah." Lisanna hugged Noah's arm and smiled sweetly. "I told them that big brother Noah used to be a powerful archmage like big sister Mira and Elisha, but they didn't believe me. Actually, most of them already believed it. They just didn't say it out loud." Elisha chuckled. "After all, many people saw how Noah effortlessly neutralized my attack with Mira and I this morning." Listening to his 3 childhood playmates speak one after another, but the style of their words was still the same as before, Noah smiled knowingly. "It seems that you've all had a good time in the guild these past 4 years. Big brother Noah, big sister Mira and Elisha are no longer the same as they were 4 years ago." Lisanna smiled mysteriously. Then, she said something that made Noah startled. "No matter what, big sister Mira and Elisha have already become S-rank archmages." S-rank archmages. This time, Noah was really surprised. He looked at Mira and Elisha in astonishment. "You passed the S-rank archmage advancement test? About 2 years after you left, I was selected by the chairman to take part in that year's S-rank archmage advancement test," Elisha said with some nostalgia. "Many things happened in between, and there were times when I almost gave up. But in the end, I persevered and passed that year's S-rank archmage advancement test, obtaining the qualifications to be promoted to an S-rank archmage. Although I wasn't willing, I passed the S-rank archmage advancement test a year after she became an S-rank archmage." Myra's face was full of displeasure. "In other words, I became an S-rank archmage a year ago. That year, when the 15-year-old Elisha passed the S-rank archmage advancement test and became an S-rank archmage, it caused quite a commotion. Because of this, she became known as the youngest S-rank archmage in the history of Fairy Tale," Lisanna said with a smile. Although big sister Mira was late by a year, there weren't many people in the history of Fairy Tale who became an S-rank archmage at the age of 16. "Big brother Noah, you're not just one step behind." Hearing that, the shock in Noah's heart slowly dissipated. Looking at Mira and Elisha's faces, he more or less felt admiration for these 2 playmates of the same age. Noah didn't know what the S-rank archmage advancement test of other guilds was like. Fairy Tale's S-rank archmage advancement test had some changes every year, so it couldn't be used as a reference. However, if Fairy Tale's members wanted to take part in the S-rank archmage advancement test, first of all, not only did they need to have a certain amount of strength, they also needed to have a certain amount of experience. This experience didn't refer to the length of time they had spent in Fairy Tale. It might be a bit of an exaggeration to say that a new member could take part in Fairy Tale's S-rank archmage advancement test, but basically, if they had 1 or 2 years' time, it wouldn't be a problem to take part in Fairy Tale's S-rank archmage advancement test. Therefore, the experience here referred to the archmage's activity and ability before taking part in the S-rank archmage advancement test. That was to say, the archmage had accepted and completed a certain number of tasks in the guild. In the end, this so-called experience was to let the guild leader see that they had the ability to take part in the S-rank archmage advancement test. In this way, the guild leader would consider letting the archmage who was active enough to enter his sight and had a certain amount of ability to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test. When Alessia took part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test, she was 15 years old. When Mira took part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test, she was 16 years old. This was enough to prove that the two girls were able to obtain the qualifications to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test at such a young age. How much effort had they put in? Even Noah's nominal elder brother, the genius who had shocked Kildas, only obtained the qualifications to take part in the S-rank Archmage advancement test at the age of 17. He passed and was promoted to an S-rank Archmage. Mira and Alessia were able to reach this step earlier than Laxus. It was no wonder that Alessia spoke with a slightly proud tone. Aren't you guys too cunning? Noah was slightly dissatisfied. In these 4 years, you guys have come looking for me many times. But you didn't tell me about this matter? Mira, Lisanna, and Alessia laughed at the same time, as if telling Noah that they did it on purpose. Noah smiled bitterly. Then how are you doing? Mira licked her lips and looked at Noah with a burning gaze. Since you've chosen to come back, that means that your crush will no longer cause any problems, right? Lisanna and Alessia's eyes were also shining, clearly very concerned about this matter. In response, Noah seemed to be repaying the 3 girls for their pranks and unhappily avoided answering. Wanna know? Let's talk about it when we have the chance. This sentence unsurprisingly caused Mira and Alessia to be dissatisfied. Only Lisanna looked as if she had thought of something. Her face was slightly red as she moved her face close to Noah's ear and said in a mosquito-like voice, "This time, Big Brother Noah won't crush my clothes and Big Sister Myra's, right?" Noah almost tripped and fell to the ground. He rolled his eyes, causing Lisanna to laugh continuously. This night, it was as if they had returned to their childhood. The 4 of them stayed in a secret place that only they knew. The sounds of laughter and banter lasted for a long time. Chapter 60. Bye-bye, Big Brother Noah. Don't go to bed too late and not wake up tomorrow. See you tomorrow. After saying their goodbyes, Mira, Lisanna, and Alessia noisily walked in the direction of the Fairy Tale Guild, leaving only their backs to Noah. Looking at Mira, Lisanna, and Alyssa's silhouettes gradually fading away in the darkness, Noah couldn't help but feel that his 3 childhood playmates had really changed a lot. Of course, the changes Noah was referring to weren't the personalities of Mira, Lisanna, and Alyssa. In fact, in terms of personality, there were basically no changes to the 3 girls. What had changed the most was their appearance. After 4 years, Mira, Lisanna, and Alyssa had become extremely attractive women in all senses of the word. Height, figure, wealth. All these factors had matured to varying degrees in the past 4 years. Compared to their youthful selves, the changes could be said to be earth-shattering. At the age of 15, Lisanna's body hadn't fully matured, but she already had her own unique charm. From time to time, she would reveal her delicate side and attract the attention of others, while Alessia still wore her cold armor all day long, hiding most of her body, making it impossible to truly judge how much she had grown over the years. However, her delicate face had shed 80 to 90% of its childishness, and was now extremely beautiful. There was no need to talk about Mira. Her looks weren't inferior to Alessia's, and her beautiful figure wasn't completely hidden like Alessia's. The impact on Noah was the greatest. Undoubtedly, when they were found half a year ago in the wilderness, the growth of the 3 girls wasn't so obvious. In just half a year, they had actually grown to such an extent. This was probably what the saying "a girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood" meant. Everyone's grown up. In the end, Noah could only sigh and turn around, walking in the direction of the Fairy Tale Guild. Not far from Fairy Tale, there was a female dormitory specially provided for the girls of the guild. Ever since Alessia joined Fairy Tale, she lived in the female dormitory, and the other girls of the guild lived there as well. Mira and Lisanna, on the other hand, lived with Elfman. The 3 siblings lived somewhere else. As for Noah, he still chose to live in the Fairy Tale Guild. After all, that was where Noah had lived for at least 2 years. From a certain point of view, it was an existence that was similar to his shelter. He really couldn't bear to move out. Apart from Noah, no one else in the fairy tale guild would be there at night, unless something special happened. Or perhaps, someone had come specifically for Noah. At a place where they could clearly see the entrance of fairy tale, Noah had unknowingly stopped in his tracks. He stood there and raised his eyes to look ahead. Whoosh! A cold night wind blew from afar, blowing past Noah and the entrance of fairy tale. Standing there, a tall and sturdy figure with a coat fluttered in the wind. It was a young man who was around 20 years old, slightly older than Noah. He wore a magic musical instrument called a sound pot on his ear. The young man stood not far from the entrance of fairy's tale with his arms crossed in front of his chest, and his eyes closed. He allowed the fur coat draped over his body to fly up and down in the wind, exuding an oppressive aura that could not be ignored. And this oppressive aura, when Noah appeared, obviously became more vigorous. Noah looked straight at the young man, who was exuding a powerful aura, without saying a word. Although the expression on his face wasn't as calm as if he had expected the other party to come, he also believed that it wouldn't be strange for the other party to appear in front of him anytime. After a while, the young man slowly opened his eyes, revealing a pair of eyes that were as sharp as an eagle's and as violent as a tiger's in Noah's field of vision. "You have grown up." Hearing this, Noah replied with a calm face. "You are still the same as before. Not much has changed." It was only 2 or 3 seconds of conversation, but the atmosphere was filled with tension. Anyone could see that the relationship between the two of them could not be considered friendly. "Do you need something from me?" Noah, who clearly knew the other party's personality, did not have the intention to waste any time, and directly looked at the other party. Laxus. The one who came was Noah's elder brother in name, Makarov's grandson Laxus Doria. "Don't be so cold, as your elder brother. Don't I have the right to care for my younger brother?" Laxus said with a cold expression. "Didn't you learn Kildas's magic, and make an oath in front of the guild members, that you will not return if you can't completely control your magic and train outside for 4 years? Now that you are back, it means that you have succeeded, right?" Laxus lowered his arms that were crossed in front of his chest, his eyes slowly becoming dangerous. "Just a little, let me, your elder brother, test your tolerance. Let me see how much you have grown in these 4 years." The tension in the air instantly turned into a heavy feeling. Facing Laxus's unfriendly invitation, Noah's face was still calm, but his eyes revealed a rare look of mockery. "What? When did you become like Naz, looking for people to duel? Don't confuse me with that guy who likes to play games." Laxus grinned maliciously. "I only attack the prey that I am interested in." As soon as his voice fell, golden arcs of electricity suddenly surged out from Laxus's body, finally forming a layer of lightning net that enveloped his entire body. Noah looked at the arcs of electricity that enveloped Laxus like countless snakes that leaped around him. He felt that the other party's magic power was many times more powerful than that at the ritual lake, and slightly narrowed his eyes. On the opposite side, Laxus had already sneered. He suddenly stomped his foot, and a bolt of lightning as thick as an arm suddenly fell from his body. Like a python, it traveled along Laxus's foot to the ground, and then along the ground, it violently shot towards Noah. Looking at the snake-like arc of electricity, Noah didn't even raise his eyes, allowing the extraordinary lightning to travel along the ground and touch his body. Bang! However, the moment the snake-like lightning touched Noah's body, it seemed to have been completely cut open. In a muffled sound, it shattered into pieces of extremely intact cubes and finally, it dissipated into the air. "Oh!" Laxus's unruly smile grew wider and wider. "Finally, you're more decent than before? Then are you satisfied?" Noah more or less seemed to be somewhat impatient. "You should know that I don't like meaningless battles. If you have achieved your goal, then let's stop here." "Stop?" Laxus's gaze turned cold. "Don't joke with me." After saying that, Laxus finally stopped standing still. Magic power surged out from his body, turning into dazzling arcs of electricity that enveloped Laxus's sturdy body. Like a flash of lightning, Laxus's figure directly turned into a bolt of lightning, and in the blink of an eye, appeared in front of Noah amidst the turbulence in the atmosphere. In the next moment, the fist that was surrounded by lightning brought along the sound of wind and thunder as it violently blasted towards Noah's head. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.